All right, our Father in heaven, we come unto thee in prayer. We do thank thee for this gathering. We ask you that thy Spirit will attend us to think about those things which are important in these discussions, especially with Emma Smith and remembering her and the things that she's done. We're also grateful for the topics which have arisen to care and to be more merciful to those who've had loss. We're grateful for the food, we're grateful for the attendance, we're grateful for the Spirit and the gospel in our lives. And we ask that they will go before us this day and open this meeting in our hearts in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
This is called Tapestry of Moon and Sun. In circles soft with evening light, we gather hearts both bold and bright, women woven by a thread of burdens shared and words unsaid. With hands held out and eyes that see, we honor each and each are free. No judgment shatters sacred space, where different paths find, we embrace. In whispers soft and laughter's ring, we hear the songs that each soul sings. Beliefs may differ, hearts remain, in love's own laughter, or in love's own language, all the same. Through storm and calm, in night and day, we bear the weight, we find our way. For in this circle we are found, in every tear, in every sound. Here strength is lent, and spirits mend, each woman's voice a cherished friend. Together we are more than one, a tapestry of moon and sun. So let us gather, let us heal, in unity our truths reveal. For in this space all burdens cease, we find our strength, we seek our peace.
So I have an introduction, and it's a little bit of a talk. Today is Emma Smith's birthday, and I feel like while so much work has been done to reclaim Joseph Smith's name, we're only just touching a point to reclaim Emma's name. And I just remember growing up in the church and hearing stories of Emma was the less faithful one. Emma was the one who lost her testimony. She opposed the work. She tried to kill Joseph Smith at times. She pushed her sister down the stairs. And that's all untrue. And I feel today is a significant day because it is her birthday. And, part of my introduction is some of Emma's own words, but I'll just read it because I'm not good at speaking. As I've studied the available accounts of righteous women in Scripture, including apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts, a pattern emerges exemplifying the strength and fearlessness of these women to stand on their own 2 feet and defend the truth. Their determined faithfulness to the light they had received, despite extreme adversity and suffering, demonstrates unwavering valiance. These women became pillars of strength and charity to their families and communities, though they were misunderstood and feared by the world. With their testimonies anchored in God, they wore courage despite all manner of terrible adversity, even to the suffering abuses of great physical and emotional cost, not only to themselves, but their families and loved ones. Emma Hale Smith and her life story exemplifies each of these qualities and more. Emma, the nearest to our generation, and the most recent account of a true high priestess. Emma was the right one for Joseph to bring to Gilmore to meet the angelic minister and receive the Nephite plates. Now I'm going to read a quote from Denver Snuffer's book, and it's Passing the Heavenly Gift. And I feel like this is a quote, or it's a footnote that I've overlooked, and I feel it's like one of the most powerful, in-depth footnotes that I've ever read. It's page 18, footnote number 10. Emma's presence was required, and this next part is very important. Her first child, Alvin, was born June 15th, 1828, 9 months after the September 22nd, 1827 date on which the plates were given into their care. Before beginning his ministry as a prophet translator, legally authorized by heaven to hold the incidents of Nephite kingship, including the Urim and Thummim, it was likely more done to commission Joseph Smith's work than we have available in our current records. Though it would be years before the eternal marriage covenant could be explained to his followers, Joseph and Emma may not have departed the hill Gilmore on September 22nd, 1827, without first being introduced to eternal covenant making. I encourage you to begin a serious study of her life as you're guided through the Holy Spirit. And as you do that, you'll be able to see how this following scripture, Proverbs 6:3, applies also to Emma. Not just in a temporal way, but a spiritual way. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above the rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night and gives food to her household and a portion to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She girds her loins with strength and strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good. Her candle goes not out by night. She lays her hand to the spindle, and her hands hold the rod. She stretches out her hands to the poor. Yea, she reaches her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates. He sits among the elders of the land. She makes fine linen and sells it, and delivers girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but you excel them all. Favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Emma's mission is of eternal significance and was foreordained together with Joseph from before the foundation of this world. Her sacrifice as a mother in Israel is unparalleled. All of the points in the proverb text I just read can be connected to Emma's life, literally and symbolically. She labored in the heat of the day to plant a vineyard. and we have the potential of becoming her daughters who call her blessed. We are now called upon to tend the garden that Emma purchased. Great and eternal are the fruits of her labours, though bitter and difficult to bear was the milk in her cup. Today we hold in remembrance the birthday of the most significant woman within the Mormon Restoration, the elect lady and mother in Israel, Emma Hale Smith. These peculiar titles are not just endearing names, but were given to Emma by the Lord and hold very specific weight and meaning to be understood by a peculiar people who honour such things. As a mother in Israel, Emma stands with Mother Rachel, Mother Rebecca, Mother Sarah, the only difference being that 3 are already resurrected and sit upon thrones. The title Elect Lady was also given to another holy woman, the Lord's beloved companion, Mary, the chief of the apostles and high priestess. I cannot help thinking what must have Emma's birthday been like on the 10th of July, but 180 years ago. 14 days prior to her birthday, on June 27th, Emma was graciously giving hospitality to Governor Thomas Ford and 60 of his men who were dining with her in the Nauvoo Mansion House at 5 p.m., the approximate hour of Joseph and Hiram's martyrdom. Tragically, Emma did not learn about their deaths until 10 p.m. that same evening. I was going to read a little bit from Lucy Mack's journal about when the bodies were brought back the next day. And this is Mother Smith. I had for a long time braced every nerve, raised every energy of my soul, and called upon God to strengthen me. But when I entered the room and saw my murdered sons extended both at once before my eyes, and heard the sobs and groans of my family, and the cries of father, husband, brothers from the lips of their wives, children, brothers, sisters, it was too much. I sank back, crying to the Lord in agony of my soul, my God, why hast thou forsaken this family? A voice replied, I have taken them to myself, that they might have rest. Emma was carried back to her room, almost in a state of insensibility. Her oldest son approached the corpse and dropped upon his knees, and laying his cheek against his father's and kissing him, exclaimed, "Oh, my father, my father." As for myself, I was swallowed up in the depths of my afflictions, and though my soul was filled with horror past imagination, yet I was dumb until I arose again to contemplate the spectacle before me. At that moment, how my mind flew through every scene of sorrow and distress which we had passed together, in which they had shown the innocence and sympathy which filled their guileless hearts. As I looked upon their peaceful, smiling countenances, I seemed almost to hear them say, "Mother, weep not for us. We have overcome the world by love. We carried to them the gospel, that their souls might be saved, and they slew us for our testimony, and thus placed us beyond their power. Their ascendancy is for a moment, ours is eternal triumph." I then thought upon the promise which I had received in Missouri, that in 5 years Joseph should have power over all his enemies. The time had elapsed and the promise was fulfilled. In the terrifying aftermath of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith and his elder brother Hiram at Carthage, Illinois in 1844, Emma was left widowed with 4 minor children adopted daughter Julia, and sons Joseph III and Frederick, Alexander, and David Hiram, born 4.5 months later. And there's a little account from Lucy Mack again about Emma. And some are being called to a mission, and Emma and several other sisters are rallying around to support these brethren. And Lucy says, Emma Smith and several other sisters began to make arrangements to furnish those who were set apart for this mission with the necessary clothing, which was no easy task as most of it had to be manufactured out of raw material. Emma's health at this time was quite delicate, yet she did not favour herself on this account. But whatever her hands found to do, she did with her might, until so far beyond her strength that she brought upon herself a heavy fit of sickness, which lasted for weeks. And although her strength was exhausted, still her spirits were the same, in which, in fact, was always the ease with her. Even under the most trying circumstances, I have never seen a woman in my life who would endure every species of fatigue and hardship, month to month, from year to year, with that unflinching courage, zeal, and patience which she has ever done. For I know that which she has had to endure. She has been tossed upon this ocean of uncertainty. She has breasted the storms of persecution and buffeted the rage of men and devils, which would have borne down almost any other woman. It may be that many may yet have to encounter the same. I pray God that this may not be the case, but should it be, may they have grace given them according to their day, even as has been the ease with her. And this is some of Emma's own words that I'll end with. My husband was a prophet. He walked and talked with angels. He did, I promise you he did. From the time we were married, I shared him with another world, a world where godlike beings taught a gospel of ancient times, long since lost. I saw the barriers crossed between this world and that. I sat for hours and transcribed the words that angels revealed. And Joseph finally sealed his great work with his life. What more do you want? Could there be a greater testament? If so, I cannot think how. But forgive me, I am old now and to speak of all this brings me pain. People ask again and again if I still believe the church. Of course I do. I believe everything God revealed through Joseph. This church was built on the blood of martyrs, and some of them were my own children. Joseph promised me that in our eternal home, I would one day have all my children, and I hold that promise dear. Yet you wonder why I remained here? Let me see if I can explain. I spent 17 years married to Joseph, loving him as I did no other, building cities and leaving them, moving from one place to another. And now I'm not moving again. With Joseph by my side, I could do it. But I buried my heart when I buried him, and I think he knew it. There were days as a prophet's wife, never to be forgotten, worlds without end, days where I would see him transported to another realm, when God would send his holy angels to teach and inspire. There was the day I sat in the Kirtland Temple, shoulder to shoulder with the saints, and saw my husband's face aglow as though he were on fire. And angels moved above us, and you could almost hear them sing, "The Spirit of God like a fire is burning." the latter-day glory begins to come forth. At that moment, Joseph stood transfigured with a glory so bright, there seemed to be no difference between him and the morning light. Those are the memories I hold on to. There are also darker ones that haunt my mind. I think of him hunted by the sheriff's men and eating food from the back doorsteps that we left for him to find, with me pregnant with our 9th child and sick, wondering if there would yet be another trick that would save my husband's life. Then there was the day they tore him from my side. Teach them to follow my footsteps, he said as he kissed our sons goodbye. Oh, Joseph, I cried, will you come home again to me, your sons and your daughter? But he answered not a word and rode away, the sacrificial lamb to the slaughter. Insult was added to injury, for I was required to entertain Governor Ford and his men, while miles away Joseph's murderers fired the deadly shots that killed him. When I next saw my husband, he was cold and dead. I fell across his body. All sense had left my head. To comfort me, people said he was a hero. He had paid the final price, and I would yet have glory with him. My husband was my glory and my sacrifice. Now sometimes I walk up to the temple site and sit all alone on a stone where I can see the river. I often wish for Joseph to come walking, his eyes twinkling, talking to me of godly things, reminding me to laugh again and making my heart sing. But now Joseph is gone, and the world couldn't leave his temple alone, and mobs desecrated it with animals, and one night I heard an awful sound that brought me out of bed. I stood with Lucy hand in hand, while our hearts bled and watched the temple burn to the ground. I tell you, Joseph was a prophet from Palmyra to Nauvoo, and I will never be sorry for all the persecution we went through, for he promised me he would keep me by his side for eternity. That promise has been my strength through all these difficult years. Eternity with Joseph, just the whisper of it brings tears to my eyes. How could I wish for anything more than to be forever at the side of the husband that I adore? Thank you.
In August 1842, Joseph said this about Emma. What unspeakable delight and what transports of joy swelled my breasts, my bosom, when I took by the hand my beloved Emma, she that was my wife, even the wife of my youth, and the choice of my heart. Many were the reverberations of my mind when contemplated for a moment the many scenes we had been called to pass through, the fatigues and the toils, the sorrows and sufferings, and joys and consolations, from time to time, which had strewed our path and crowned our board. Oh, what a commingling of thought filled my mind for the moment. Again, she is here, even in the 7th trouble, undaunted, firm, and unwavering, unchangeable, affectionate Emma. Today is a day to acknowledge, speak of, and come to an understanding of Emma Hale Smith, born on July 10th, 1804, exactly 220 years ago this date. Happy birthday, Emma, wherever you are, and thank you for the example you were and are to so many of us since you came into this world. I hope and fervently pray I can, with the help from God, and possibly Emma, to speak what needs to be spoken of about this extraordinary woman and her role in the restoration. I want to bring her to life for you this day. Whatever you may or may not think of Emma or about her, whatever you may or may not think about Joseph, This I know to be true. They were chosen, elected, called by God to bring forth the work of God. They are known by heaven as a son and a daughter of God, part of the family of God, connected, no doubt, to the fathers in heaven. Michelle Stone spoke briefly on June 27th, almost 2 weeks ago, and she stated that you can't have Joseph without Emma. It is hard to separate the two. They are one. They are a virtuous and holy couple, regardless of what the world thinks or states. We know so much about Joseph. However, this conference, this talk, I hope to acknowledge the woman next to the man, on equal standing with him. The Lord stated in answer for the prayer for covenant in T&C 157, I forgot the verse. And again, I say to you, Abraham and Sarah sit upon a throne, for he could not be there if not for Sarah's covenant with him. Isaac and Rebekah sit upon a throne, and Isaac likewise could not be there if not for Rebekah's covenant with him. And Jacob and Rachel sit upon a throne, and Jacob could not be there if not for Rachel's covenant with him. Close quote. A man cannot be on a throne in heaven without a companion, a wife, and I stress only one. In September 1823, Joseph was visited by the angel Nephi and was told, quote, God had a work for me to do, and that my name should be had for good and evil among all nations, kindreds, and tongues, or that it should be both good and evil spoken of among all people. He said there was a book deposited, written upon gold plates, giving an account of the former inhabitants of this continent and the source from whence they sprang, close quote. The thought came to me not too long ago was that the thought came to me what was said to Joseph regarding his name being spoken of, both good and evil, also applies just as much to Emma. And I dare say even more so what has been said regarding her in our day. I came across this statement in regards to Emma by artist Partial, who helped in creating a video about Emma's last dream or vision, which I will recount later. Quote, as for the evaluations of Emma's life and character, Emma is one of those people who has been abused by history, I think. Instead of wanting to know who the real woman was, people want to use her for political purposes. To some people, she was that awful woman who lied about polygamy and who kept Joseph's children out of the church. To others, she is depicted as a heroic goddess who could do no wrong. Both extremes are wrong, I think, close quote. She has been misunderstood on so many levels, and thanks to Brigham Young and his viewpoints about Emma, he had such an influence on the people that history sees her through his lenses. I'd like to give a little background on Emma and her life growing up. She was born to Isaac and Elizabeth Hale and was the seventh of 9 children and the third daughter. She grew up with 5 brothers and 3 sisters. Emma loved her parents and siblings, and she had a very close relationship with her father. Her family lived near the banks of the Susquehanna River in Harmony, Pennsylvania. Her mother was a devout Methodist, and her father was religious for a time, but became, quote, deistic in his religious philosophy, trusting his own judgment, close quote. However, according to accounts, Isaac was one day walking through the woods and came across his daughter Emma, who was about 6, 7, or 8 years old at the time, praying that her father would return to the faith and it affected him so that he did return back to church. Emma had dark hair, hazel eyes, and an olive complexion. She had a beautiful soprano voice and loved to sing hymns in church as a girl. And as an adult, she stood about 5'9" at full height. When she was growing up, she was very skilled in the waters with the canoe, and she loved to ride horses. And thanks to her brother, David, according to her brother, he said Emma could, quote, handle horses, and she rode with self-confidence and skill, close quote. It was also stated about Emma's character that, quote, her quick wit, remarked by friends when she became an adult, was shaped by her family in her early years. And as a young woman, Emma was physically and emotionally strong with a streak of independence. Her demeanor, for the most part, was quiet but sociable. She had a delightful sense of humor. Evidence suggests that she judged people's characters quite accurately and acted upon her own instincts regardless of others' opinions. She moved with slow precision but was capable of doing an amazing amount of work in little time. In 1825, Joseph was working in Harmony, Pennsylvania, when he first met the tall, dark-haired school teacher with a quick wit and lively sense of humor. They became friends, and then finally, Joseph asked Emma to marry him. She consented, but Emma's father would not give his blessing and allow them to be married. Twice, Joseph asked Isaac if he could marry Emma, and twice he was rejected. So, Joseph and Emma were forced to elope, celebrating a secret wedding on January 18th, 1827, in South Bainbridge, New York. He was 21 years old, but she was but 22. As Emma related later, Joseph convinced her to participate in the clandestine operation on the spur of the moment. She simply set off one day to visit the Stowell home, having no intention of marrying when I left. However, after being cajoled by Joseph while there, and since she noted good-humoredly, she preferred to marry him more than anyone else she knew, she consented. 9 months later, in September 1827, Joseph and Emma headed out from his parents' home after midnight to obtain the plates spoken of 4 years prior. Joseph had previously been told by an angel, in order to receive the plates, he must bring the right person. He took Emma with him. Going back to what Eva said in her introduction, it seems the eternal covenant possibly would have been established that night in order for the sacred records to be retrieved. Could Emma and Joseph have been sealed by the Holy Spirit of promise that night in a marriage and covenant with God? Something to think about. Even though Emma never saw or was allowed to see the plates, she bore this testimony. The plates often lay on the table without any attempt at concealment, wrapped in a small linen tablecloth, which I had given him to fold them in. I once felt of the plates as they thus lay on the table, tracing their outline and shape. They seemed to be pliable like thick paper, and would rustle with a metallic sound when the edges were moved by the thumb, as one does sometimes thumb the edges of the paper, edges of a book. I did not attempt to handle the plates, other than I have told you, nor uncover them to look at them. I was satisfied that it was the work of God, and therefore feel to be necessary to do so. It was around this time the plates were retrieved that Emma conceived their first child, and gave birth exactly 9 months later to their firstborn son on June 15, 1828. They named him after Joseph's oldest brother, Alvin, who had died unexpectedly in November 1823. Baby Alvin lived only 3 hours. What heartbreak, what grief and sorrow. Joseph and Emma had 11 children total, including 2 of whom they adopted after their twins had died in 1830. Emma and Joseph buried 6 babies, and they raised 5 to adulthood. I would like to mention by name each of their children. Alvin, born and died 1828. Thaddeus and Louisa, the twins, born and died 1830. Joseph Murdoch, one of the twins they adopted, 1831, died in 1832. Julia Murdoch, born 1831, and died 1880. Joseph III, born 1832, and died 1914. Frederick Granger Williams, born 1836, died 1862. Alexander Hale, born 1838, died 1909. Don Carlos, born 1840, died 1841. Another infant son that they did not name, born and died in 1842. And their last child, David Hiram, born 1844 and died 1904. In July 1830, a revelation was given through Joseph to Emma from the Lord. This is what the Lord said to her. Emma, my daughter in Zion, a revelation I give unto you concerning my will. Behold, your sins are forgiven you, and you are an elect lady, in whom I have called. Murmur not because of the things which you have not seen, for they are withheld from you and from the world, which is wisdom in me, in a time to come, and the office of your calling shall be for comfort unto my servant Joseph, your husband, in his afflictions, with consoling words in the spirit of meekness, and you shall go with him at the time of his going, and be unto him for a scribe, that I may send Oliver Cowdery wherever I will. And you shall be ordained under his hand to expound scriptures and exhort the church, according as it should be given you by my Spirit. For he shall lay his hands upon you, and you shall receive the Holy Ghost. And your time shall be given to writing and to learning much. And you need not fear, for your husband shall support you from the church. For unto him is his calling, that all things shall be revealed unto them, whatever I will, according to their faith. And verily I say unto you, that you should lay aside the things of this world, and seek for the things of a better. And it shall be given you also to make a selection of sacred hymns, as it shall be given you, which is pleasing unto me to be had in my church. For my soul delights in the song of the heart. Yea, the song of the righteous is a song unto me, and it shall be answered with a blessing upon their heads. Wherefore lift up your heart and rejoice, and cleave unto the covenants you have made. Continue in the spirit of meekness, and beware of pride. Let your soul delight in your husband, and glory which shall come upon him. Keep my commandments continually, and a crown of righteousness you shall receive. And except you do this, where I am you cannot come. And verily I say unto you, that this is my voice unto all. Even so, amen. On December 9th, 1834, Joseph Smith Sr. laid his hands on his daughter-in-law Emma and gave her a patriarchal blessing. And this is what he said. Emma, thou art blessed of the Lord, for thy faithfulness and truth. Thou shalt be blessed with thine husband, and rejoice in the glory which shall come upon him. Thy soul has been afflicted because of the wickedness of men in seeking the destruction of thy companion. And thy whole soul has been drawn out in prayer for his deliverance. Rejoice, for the Lord thy God has heard thy supplication. Thou hast grieved for the hardness of the hearts of thy father's house, and thou hast longed for their salvation. The Lord will have respect for thy cries, and by his judgments he will cause some of them to see their folly and repent of their sins. But it will be by affliction that they will be saved. Thou shalt see many days, yea, the Lord will spare thee till thou art satisfied, for thou shalt see thy Redeemer. Thy heart shall rejoice in the great work of the Lord, and no one shall take thy rejoicing from thee. Thou shalt ever remember the great condescension of thy God in permitting thee to accompany my son Joseph, when the angel delivered the record of the Nephites to his care. Thou hast seen much sorrow because the Lord has taken from thee 3 of thy children. In this thou art not to be blamed, for he knows thy pure desires to raise up a family, and the name of my son shall be blessed. And now behold, I say unto thee, that thus says the Lord, if thou wilt believe, thou shalt yet be blessed in this thing, and thou shalt bring forth other children to the joy and satisfaction of thy soul, and to the rejoicing of thy friends. Thou shalt be blessed with understanding, and have power to instruct thy sex, teach thy family righteousness, and by little ones the way of life, and the holy angels shall watch over thee, and thou shalt be saved in the kingdom of God. Even so, amen. I wanted to point out something in that blessing. The great condescension of God. Think about that when you consider what was possibly required before Joseph could get those plates. I believe he condescended and sealed them. That's my opinion. And 9 months later, have a child of covenant. I also wanted to make note of when she was told that to the joy and satisfaction of thy soul, and to the rejoicing of thy friends. To be called a friend of God is a rare thing. And I believe at this point, Emma was known as a friend of God. And I believe that the heavens were rejoicing over her. On September 14, 1835, the High Council met and decreed that Emma Smith be appointed to make a selection of sacred hymns as she had been commanded in the Elect Lady Revelation. Her first collection most likely had been destroyed with William Phelps' printing press in Missouri 3 years earlier. Phelps was assigned to edit and arrange the songs for printing. He was a poet in his own right and contributed 26 hymns to Emma's collection. And she also included several others. I believe that Emma may have been one of the contributors herself, because there were several hymns that have an unknown authorship. She chose 42 songs from other denominations. Emma's hymnal came off the press early in 1836, although it bears an 1835 date. And at the Kirtland dedication, there were six hymns that were sung by Emma and by the congregation at the time that Emma had chosen. I kind of feel that part of her requirement by the Lord to expound scriptures was in the fact that she chose these hymns, and these hymns that had scripture were part of her expounding and exhorting to the church. I feel she would have had to discern which hymns were scripture and what the Lord wanted. Oftentimes, Emma was forced to be without Joseph. He was either in hiding or put into prison or off doing church business, which left her to take care of things at home and with their children, as well as helping others in need. She often was ill, especially during pregnancies, but according to her mother-in-law, Emma kept going. In October and November 1838, Joseph, Hiram, and other men were taken to Liberty Jail and forced to remain prisoners in horrific conditions. Meanwhile, the prisoners were hearing about the terrible things happening to their people, their families. This is a quote. The men guarding the prisoners grew bolder in their insults after the sacking of Far West. They added tales of the sexual abuse and rape of women. This was a claim the prisoners were in no position to doubt. Atop all the other uncertainties, Joseph had to wonder about his wife and the safety of his family. Emma Smith was targeted by the mob, but how much abuse she took is not certain. There were women in Far West who had been raped. Approximately 4 years earlier, Emma Smith was living in Illinois. She corresponded with Governor Thomas Carleen about the abuse they endured in Missouri. Her letter does not provide details of what she and her children suffered, but confirmed there had been many cruel and illegal operations of Lilburn W. Boggs and the consequent suffering of myself and family, she said. She confirmed that her heart burned with indignation towards her calumniators as well as the perpetrators of those horrid crimes. She did not write down the details, but she characterized them as afflictions and many sufferings which cannot be uttered. The sexual assault of Mormon women would not have been widely admitted by the victims. According to some accounts, whether it can be absolutely verified, there were possibly gang rapes of prominent Mormon women, one of who was Eliza Snow. It begs the question if Emma was one of those assaulted in the same way. The 12th of November, 1838, from a letter Joseph wrote to Emma while in jail. O God, grant that I may have the privilege of seeing once more my lovely family in the enjoyment of the sweets of liberty and social life. To press them to my bosom and kiss their lovely cheeks would fill my heart with unspeakable gratitude. Emma, tell the children that I am alive and trust I shall come and see them before long. Comfort their hearts all you can and try to be comforted yourself all you can. Oh, the things that they must have endured, I cannot even fathom. On March 17, 1842, the Relief Society was established. Joseph, John Tyler, and Willard Richards were present in the Masonic Lodge as Emma entered the lodge with 19 other women. The first order of business was to signify by vote if all were satisfied with the character and reputation of each woman present. When the vote was positive, Emma introduced 7 additional names, bringing the official membership to 27. Joseph proposed that the sisters elect a president and 2 counselors. Elizabeth Ann Whitney moved that Emma be president. The support was unanimous. Joseph read the elect lady revelation explaining that Emma was called an elect lady because she was elected to preside. Quote, John Taylor laid his hands on the head of Emma Smith and blessed her and confirmed upon her all the blessings which had been conferred upon her, that she might be a mother in Israel, and look to the wants and the needs, and be a pattern of virtue, and possess all the qualifications necessary for her to stand, preside, and dignify her office, to teach the females those principles requisite for their future usefulness." Close quote. A mother in Israel, a pattern of virtue. These were more than titles. They foreshadowed things to come and served to accentuate Emma's motherly relationship to the daughters of Zion. Emma was to set an example and to prepare the women of her day for the blessings she and they were to receive as daughters of God, and set the pattern for the women of the church through future generations. When speaking about purity, Emma urged caution so as to avoid the appearance of evil. She admonished the women to be watchful of all their actions and deeds, and to see to it they did nothing to bring reproach upon themselves or to society. She taught by being virtuous they would obtain the blessings of the Lord and have His Spirit to be their companion. She invited the sisters to throw a cloak of charity over faults that might be apparent, instead of criticizing, to forgive. She instructed them in their duties and to serve the poor and needy, to extend comfort to widows and orphans. In short, she urged, as did the Savior, to love and serve one another. This exemplifies her life, her beliefs, and her sacrifices, as well as her desire to follow God's teachings. I'd like to speak a little bit now about what happened after the martyr of Joseph and Hiram. At the time Joseph and Hiram left for Carthage in June 1844, Emma was 4 months pregnant, and the children ranged from 13, Julia, to 6-year-old Alexander. The parting was heart-wrenching for all, especially Emma and Joseph. I tried to imagine what that looked like and felt like for Emma, and the pain that must have come to her, possibly knowing deep inside she would never see the love of her life again, at least in this mortality. However, there must have been hope, because Emma asked for a blessing from Joseph. He told her he didn't have time to write one, or to give her one, but told her, quote, to write the best blessing she could, and he would sign it when he returned. So Emma wrote out her blessing as thus recorded. First of all, that I would crave the richest of heaven's blessings would be wisdom from Heavenly Father bestowed daily, so that whatever I might do or say, I could not look back at the close of the day with regret, nor neglect the performance of any act that would bring a blessing. I desire the Spirit of God to know and understand myself. I desire a fruitful act of mind, that I may be able to comprehend the designs of God when revealed through His servants without doubting. I desire the spirit of discernment, which is one of the promised blessings of the Holy Ghost. I particularly desire wisdom to bring up all the children that are, or may be committed to my charge, in such a manner that they will be useful ornaments in the kingdom of God, and in a coming day arise up and call me blessed. I desire prudence, that I may not, through ambition, abuse my body and cause it to become old and careworn, but that I may wear a cheerful countenance, living to perform all the work that I covenanted to perform in the spirit world, and be a blessing to all who may need aught at my hands. I desire with all my heart to honor and respect my husband as my head, ever to live in his confidence, and by acting in unison with him, retain the place which God has given me by his side. And I ask my Heavenly Father that through humility I may be enabled to overcome that curse which was pronounced on the daughters of Eve. I desire to see my kindred and friends embrace the principles of eternal truth, that I may rejoice with them in the blessings which God has in store for all who are willing to be obedient to his requirements. Finally, I desire that whatever may be my lot through life, I may be enabled to acknowledge the hand of God in all things. These desires of my heart were called forth by Joseph sending me word that he had not time as he would like. And so she wrote the best blessing she could. Joseph never returned to sign that blessing. Eva mentioned that at the time of the martyrdom, the governor and 60 men she was hosting, and she actually, or someone in the house at the time, had overheard at that around that time, this gentleman comes in and tells the governor, "Ere this time the deed is done." I'm not sure who it was that overheard that, but I believe Emma would have known. Would have known what had been done. We all know the story of the martyrdom. We all know the sacrifice Joseph and Hiram laid on the altar. Not only was it their sacrifice, but it was the sacrifice of the wives and children and their mother laid on the altar as well. Lucy Mack Smith, the mother of Joseph and Hiram, within a 4-year time frame lost her husband and 4 sons, Hiram, Joseph, Don Carlos, Samuel. And in all, she lost 5 sons from the time the restoration began. Quote, the bodies were brought, and I'm quoting something else here. So the bodies were brought home on the 28th of June, just 1 day short of the 14th anniversary of Emma's baptism. Once again, Joseph had been forced to leave Emma, but this time he was not waiting in some hideaway for her to bring the children and come to him. Joseph was gone. Emma would be 40 on her next birthday, nearly 2 weeks later, and would bear her last son in 5 months. An eyewitness to Emma's grief recorded, "When I entered the mansion, I found the wife of Joseph seated in a chair in the center of a small room, weeping and wailing bitterly. In a loud, unrestrained voice, her face covered with her hands. Reverend Mr. John P. Green came in, and as the bitter cries of the weeping woman reached his ears, he burst forth in tones of manly grief and trembling in every nerve, approached Mrs. Smith and exclaimed, 'Oh, Sister Emma, God bless you.' Then clasping her head in his hands, he uttered a long, fervent prayer for her peace, protection, and resignation. The first words of the poor woman were, 'Why, O God, am I thus afflicted? Why am I a widow? Thou knowest I have always trusted in thy law.' Mr. Green rejoined to her that this affliction would be to her a crown of life. She answered quickly, 'My husband was my crown. For him and for my children I have suffered the loss of all things. And why, O God, am I thus deserted and my bosom torn with this tenfold anguish?' Counting the widows of Joseph's uncles, Lucy Mack Smith, Emma, Elvira, Samuel's wife, Agnes, Don Carlos' wife, and Mary, Hiram's wife, there were 7 Smith widows and more than 24 children left without fathers to protect them. Mother Lucy gave her sorrowing daughter-in-laws all the comfort she could, commenting, 'I am convinced that no one but a widow can imagine the feelings of a widow.'" Close quote. Thinking on this, it makes me recall
what my sister has gone through when she lost her husband 8 years ago. Sorry. I want to add the scripture taken from Teachings and Commandments 110, Lectures of Faith 6, verse 7. Let us here observe that a religion that does not require the sacrifice of all things never has power sufficient to produce the faith necessary unto life and salvation. For from the first existence of man, the faith necessary unto the enjoyment of life and salvation never could be obtained without the sacrifice of all earthly things. It was through this sacrifice and this only that God has ordained that men should enjoy eternal life. And it is through the medium of the sacrifice of all earthly things that men do actually know that they are doing the thing that are well-pleasing in the sight of God. When a man has offered and sacrificed all that he has, and I say women too, for this truth's sake, not even withholding his or her life, and believing before God that he has been called to make this sacrifice because he seeks to do his will, he does know most assuredly that God does and will accept his sacrifice and offering, and that he has not nor will not seek his face in vain. Under these circumstances, then, he can obtain the faith necessary for him to lay hold on eternal life. Now I ask you, did not only Joseph offer the sacrifice spoken of in the scripture, but Emma as well? She laid her husband on the altar and her children. Emma was a force to be reckoned with even in her pregnant and sick state, for she had to face off Brigham the fall after her husband had been killed. He expected her to give over paperwork and the manuscript of the inspired translation of the Bible. There was dispute over what belonged to the church and what did not. Brigham wanted Emma to turn everything over to the church, and they would take care of the debts and give her and the children an allowance. To his surprise, Emma refused to give over everything he asked for and stood her ground. She also resented that there were armed guards at her door. Her son believed it was just for protection, but Emma felt they were being put under surveillance. I'm kind of inclined to agree with that latter. I'd like to finish by speaking of the vision and dream Emma had recounted to her nurse before her passing. Emma had told her nurse that Joseph came to her in a vision and said, quote, "Emma, come with me. It is time for you to come with me." As Emma related it, she said, "I put on my bonnet and my shawl and went with him. I did not think that it was anything unusual. I went with him into a mansion, and he showed me through the different apartments of that beautiful mansion. And one room was the nursery. In that nursery was a babe in the cradle. She said, 'I knew my babe, my Don Carlos, that was taken from me.' She sprang forward, caught the child up in her arms, and wept with joy over the child. When Emma recovered herself sufficient, she turned to Joseph and said, 'Joseph, where are the rest of my children?' He said to her, 'Emma, be patient, and you shall have all of your children.' Then she saw standing by his side a personage of light, even the Lord Jesus Christ." Emma passed away not but a few days after this on April 30th, 1879, in her 75th year. Her last words spoken according to record were, "Joseph, yes, yes, I am coming." There is much I have not recounted, and there could be a whole lot more I could say. As you probably all are aware, if you want to learn more about this extraordinary woman, go study about her. Emma, beloved companion of Joseph,
elect lady, daughter of God, mother in Israel, a woman of strength, faith, diligence, and charity, a woman who sacrificed much to attain something greater than this fallen world could provide.
Women of Truth and Freedom, written by B. Carleen Loveland-Taylor. Dear sisters and friends of Emma Hale Smith Bidelman, thank you for allowing me to share a few thoughts. I wish I could be with you in person to hear your words, see your expressions of love, kindness, and shared knowledge. Someone earlier in a text expressed the thought that Emma might be close by. We might ask ourselves, why would Emma not be here and others? Is there another place in this mortal world where Emma is being honored, explained, respected, and loved? Where is her truth being told? I sense she is peeking in and is pleased. Thank you to everyone who has made this moment possible. It is my prayer that I might clearly express some ideas, truths, and thoughts that might be of value. It has been shown to me in a profound way that together and individually we are part of a precious connected ancestry that, for the most part, is unrecognized by tingles in our souls. In this life, we are offered only a thimbleful of knowledge concerning what is within us and encompassing. For example, science is only beginning to study DNA from their partially darkened lens of hypothesis. As children of our Father and Mother in heaven, I submit that our DNA is much deeper and more powerful than words can express or explain, unless though acknowledging and intelligence of eternal teachers. There is a book titled The Founding Mothers, The Women Who Raised Our Nation. It is written and researched by Cookie Roberts and published in 2004. I remember Cookie Roberts. She was a respected journalist, commentator, wife, and mother. I saw the book on a free exchange table and began reading it while I waited for an appointment. Then somewhere I accidentally set it down and lost the book. The coincidence of finding the book and the few words I read would not leave my mind. I had a strange thirst to know more about these founding mothers and knew I needed to read the book. I requested it from the local library, and after reading only a few pages, I became extremely ill and was unable to read or do anything for days. Time passed and I needed to return the book, but the voice in my heart kept saying, "No, you need to read this book." Then Eva asked me to write something for this conference, and it came to me that this thick, small print, complicated book had information to incorporate into this paper. I'd like to share a bit of what I discovered and how I felt it connects to Emma Smith and to us. The founding mothers of the Revolution were approximately the age of Emma Smith's grandmothers. These women were part and parcel of not yet country and reared the sons and daughters of liberty. Think of that, the sons and daughters of liberty. We know the basic stories of some of the history. Go back with me around 1763, when these women were writing pamphlets, renouncing the Stamp Act, unfair taxes, boycotting tea, and living under the rule of King George, a king who desired the colonists to be like slaves to Great Britain and the English hierarchy. They considered citizens who moved to the colonies the undesirables, the lowlifes of England, but they were actually the jewels in God's plan. His plan to restore the gospel in a free land, thus fulfilling the prophecies in the Book of Mormon, prophecies engraved on plates that Emma carried, hid, and helps Joseph protect and translate. Both Joseph and Emma had 7 common ancestors who sailed to America on the Mayflower. John Howland was one of these ancestors. He fell overboard in a storm by the hand of God was able to grasp a rope tossed overboard to rescue him and hang on until pulled back into the boat. He later married Elizabeth Tilley, another one of the 7 common ancestors of Joseph and Emma. 8 generations later, Joseph and Emma would marry. Joseph's grandfather, Azel Smith, served in the Revolutionary War, as did Emma's father, Isaac Hale. Their mothers can be counted as founding mothers, although little is known of their activities. Surviving letters, notes, and paper written by women are rare. Abigail Adams desired that her husband, John, discard her correspondence to him. But he wisely kept them, and they offered insight into the lives, happenings, and feelings of these women. Consider the founding mothers and daughters. Their homes were sometimes razed and burned. They were targets for capture and often fled with their family. Minutes ahead of the British, some of their children became spies. A few dressed as boys and fought for liberty. Others wrote pamphlets or had influence with their husband, encouraging them to stand strong for freedom and independence. Their DNA carried the torch and understanding of freedom. As a general rule, the founding mothers had a child every 2 years. They could choose to stay home or follow their husbands into the battlefield. Many of the general wives and others followed their husbands, helped feed the troops, sewed clothes, cooked, and went home to have their babies. Unless they died in childbirth, most returned to the bedraggled army, leaving their new child with a sibling or relative and wet nurse. Martha Washington stated that she heard every gun fired, cannonball launched, and sounds of each battle. George stated that Martha was a comfort, a source of strength to him, and cheered the troops. She and George had no children together. Martha had 4 children before she was left a very rich widow and chose to marry the indebted war hero, George Washington. All of Martha's children died as children, except one who died during the war. 16-year-old Eliza Lucas Pinnicky was left to manage 3 South Carolina plantations, care for her ailing mother and a sibling toddler, while her father went to Spain, where he later died. She developed a way to grow the much sought-after indigo, shared the seeds with her neighbors, and created a profitable cash crop to sell to England before the war. Later, Eliza chose to marry and had 2 sons before her husband died. She was 36 years old. Duty was everything to these women. Emma would have grown up hearing and knowing the stories her grandmothers and mothers. Her father's brother was a famous Methodist minister, Nathan Hale. When I think of Emma's history, the time in which she entered the world, her endurance and faith, I believe that Emma Smith developed and carried within her the DNA I called divine natural access. This DNA, or divine natural access, is available and has spread from women through the generations. I believe it is alive today and within the hearts and of the souls of good women and humble followers of Christ. We currently abide in a dark place surrounded above the glorious light of heaven. We forget to look up as we wade through mud, sometimes falling completely submerged into the sewers offered by the darkest devils. Family seems to be regulated to something of the past. Children are replaced with pets, and maybe one child. Satan tells his lies to anyone who listens, saying, "Why have children? Who don't want children? You don't want children. There is no hope for a better life. Enjoy this moment." The list of lies that spreads darkness and hopelessness in today's environment is extensive. The DNA of the founding mothers, their children and grandchildren, including Emma Smith, born before and during Emma's lifetime, provided a DNA that still flows untethered with the righteous women and children of today. It is possible that our Father and Mother in heaven planned ahead, knowing that during this, our current dark time, that the DNA of these past founding mothers would desperately be needed. A baby every 2 years, even during the battle for freedom as the call for truth and liberty grow. The Book of Mormon, waiting on a hillside. I propose that this DNA, which I labeled as divine natural access, is within us and alive today if we choose through righteous efforts and living to access it. As a young Maya maid in the LDS Church, I was taught that Emma Smith denied the faith, had a nervous breakdown, and was uncooperative and unsupportive of Joseph Smith regarding plural marriage. Then, to finish the point, the teacher referenced her second marriage to Louis Bideman in 1847, the just rewards for her disobedience to Joseph and Brigham Young, and for her sins and choices. Brigham Young reported that Bideman was a drunkard, abusive, and lazy. My research brought to light that he was an engaging, ambitious man who loved Emma, protected her, and Emma loved him. Although not a member, he defended and assisted the Latter-day Saints. He did drink some, but not in excess. He wasn't perfect, but he cared and loved for our precious Emma, and for the most part, she had peace in her life. Emma died July 10th, 1879, at the age of 74. When her casket was taken through the streets of Nauvoo, the women wept and kissed her casket. She was highly regarded and was dearly loved. Her service to others was beyond measure. In 1844, on the 15th of May, only days before Joseph's martyrdom, Charles Francis Adams, the grandson of John Adams, the son of Quincy Adams, visited Nauvoo and met Joseph. As they were living, Joseph Smith gave Adams a Book of Mormon and signed it inside, from Joseph Smith to C.F. Adams. That's when Adams turned to Joseph Smith and said, you, sir, have way too much power. It is reported that Joseph smiled and said, "You're right, but I'm the only man in the world it would be safe with." This was the end of the story until June 15th, or 2015, when a couple from Bountiful, Utah visited John Quincy Adams' small cottage library in Peacefield. It holds 14,000 rare books and documents from the Revolutionary era. The stone cottage is fireproof and off the visual visitor's path, but is open to the public by appointment. There, sitting on a display table, the Utah couple saw 1841 edition of the Book of Mormon with the name Emma Smith engraved on the bottom of the spine. Only a handful of the Book of Mormons were signed by Joseph and a few engraved with names. What a message to know that Emma's personal copy was preserved with the most important documents of time. For me, this is a quiet additional testimony of the historical moments from the Revolution to the Restoration. Our beloved Emma was a founding mother in every way. She was born 21 years after the Revolutionary War ended in 1783. With the signing of the Paris Peace Treaty, she understood her moment in history and her duty. Emma's DNA, divine natural access, dedication, love of truth, and freedom can inspire, lift our hearts, and remind us to look up, to see and join the grand design.
So this is part 2 of the talk that I gave, and this was a statement shared with a small gathering of women, who are experimenting in picking up the baton from Emma, and a relief society of sorts, but without the hierarchy or without seats and all of that. And I didn't realise, but it was presented on 17th of March 2024, which was, this is really significant to me, that was the first day, the first meeting of the Relief Society. May we remember what was given to all women who hold sacred in their hearts the Lord's restoration, as administered through Joseph and Emma Smith. We welcome you and thank you for being here. In the hope to understand our duty and to move forward into the new season approaching, we invite you to turn your hearts with ours in contemplation of the sacred things which were given to Emma Smith within the time frames of 1827, 1830, 1832, and the further instructions to the Female Relief Society of Nauvoo in 1842 to 1844. Specifically, to once again come under the authority and mirror the divine female pattern of heaven, to comprehend the scriptures, receive the covenants, and to be diligent in the responsibilities devolving upon us. As daughters of the continuing restoration, we must strive to remember the counsel given by our elect Mother Emma. May her words and guidance become precious to our hearts today. Within the early history of this society, revelation was given to Joseph and Emma, who then instructed the women concerning their ministerial functions, both temporally and spiritually. But in very short time, the female society was silenced, controlled and confined through Brigham and the 12. Soon after the murder of her husband, the prophet, Emma was taken out of her divine calling as president of the female society by priest-crafting men in high places. Essentially, wisdom was removed out of her rightful place, and there was no more space or use found for her counsel, nor blessings within the hearts of the people. Denver Snuffer said, "Proclaiming wisdom is better than rubies. She asks us to receive her instruction rather than seek silver and gold. Nothing else is to be compared with her wisdom. She instructs in virtues that would make any person better. But her instruction will also make living in peace with others possible. Nothing in this world is more desirable than acquiring wisdom, understanding and putting knowledge to wise use. Zion will require the wisdom to use pure knowledge in meekness, humility, and charity. Zion will require her influence." That's from Our Divine Parents. And then from Preserving the Restoration. "It is not God's purpose to abandon the restoration. It is his purpose to preserve the restoration, which at this moment is in terrible jeopardy. The restoration itself must be rescued." Again, from Preserving the Restoration. "We should be completing the restoration, not throwing anything away. We are trying to preserve, return, and renew. Nothing given through Joseph should be discarded if it is useful, laudable, worthy, desirable, or came through the restoration. God's purpose is to preserve, not abandon the restoration. Since God has not forgot the work he began through Joseph Smith, then neither will he forget the work he began through Emma Smith. As the world loses light and the Spirit of Christ withdraws, our merciful God has given women a sacred mandate to guard and nurture our families and communities, and through our united labour, preserve warmth of heart through wisdom, love, and charity. We must make use of the seals while they are upon the earth, and seek to have our hearts purified and sanctified, that we may accomplish this great work for the benefit of the family of God. We feel the time has come for the daughters of the Restoration to walk in their divine privileges and rights, in a likeness of the first female relief society, but according to the needs and circumstances of our own day. These are some of the obligations and blessings given to women: to seek after righteousness and walk in discernment, to walk circumspectly and shun the appearance of evil, to stand on her own 2 feet and defend the gospel, to cherish one another, watch over one another, comfort one another, to nourish faith and be engaged in good works, to set an example for the brethren and to bless the community, to bring others unto Christ through teaching his gospel, to care for and relieve the distressed, and be ambitious to do good, to cultivate spiritual gifts and walk in them, to inspire other women in their divine role through teaching and admonishing through Scripture, to make temporal and spiritual provision for the returning lost tribes, to minister in righteousness to the house of Israel, specifically attend to the role and duties of women within the Lord's temple when such is revealed, to succor and uplift any who stand in need in the church or out, it matters not, to minister in Christ's name in meekness, love, and charity to the poor and the needy, the sick and the afflicted, to labour to assist in the building of the Lord's house, to diligently keep records of our history for the rising generations in Zion, which records will be housed in the temple. It was important for the Lord to preserve the prophetic and sacred words he gave through Joseph and Emma, which were directed exclusively to the women. The words gave authorization and legitimacy to women's role, equal and independent standing to that of the male priesthood, and set the pattern for a women-led temporal and spiritual ministry. With the current climate of the world in which women find themselves situated, and with a new dispensation and similar circumstances as the previous, those guiding words are more needed now than before. As we work within our communities to remember what was given previously, not only to say but to do, the Lord will provide us an opportunity to move it forward with His assistance. There are many willing to respond to the call, but we need to have clean hands, pure hearts, and become sanctified so that we may receive direction from the Lord and our mothers in heaven to know how to correctly labor and how to sacrifice. Gratefully, an initial pattern to follow and wise counsel was given to us through the elect Lady Emma, and we hope for the voice of the Lord to provide continuing revelation applicable to our circumstances in our day. The vision, role, and blessings of what the Lord intends for the mothers and daughters in Zion are directly connected with the covenants of the fathers, the return of Enoch City, and further understanding of women's form and function within a temple setting, or as it was called in Joseph and Emma's day, the temple, the house for the daughters of Zion, and a return of Christ in glory accompanied with her presence. And this is a prophecy Joseph Smith gave. Joseph Smith said, "This society shall have power to command queens in their midst. I now deliver it as a prophecy that before 10 years shall roll around, the queens of the earth shall come and pay their respects to this society. They shall come with their millions and shall contribute of their abundance to the relief of the poor. If you will be pure, nothing can hinder." And I believe like that prophecy is on the table awaiting to be fulfilled in our day right now, if some women will heed that call. Denver Snuffer said, "There are heavenly parents to be sure. They are two separate beings, a father and a mother. She exists and her role is acknowledged in Scripture. We are supposed to find her. And in the last days temple, should it finally be built by a humble and obedient people, her open presence will be there." Close quote. But before we get that far, there is a lot of ground to cover in our taking seriously what was initially given. Everything we can gather that is directly from this dyad is a treasure beyond price. Their words to the society inspired women and explained their authority when others would contend about their right to do a thing, and the duties required of them as united sisters for Zion. Emma and Joseph's words give legitimacy to all we are called to do today. What has been handed down to us and known as the Relief Society, stemming from the LDS Church, is far below what the Lord had in store for His daughters. These are true statements when it was said, quote, "Relief Society is now a man's organization populated by women, and through Brigham Young and correlation, the women's organization was brought under the authority of the general and local priesthood, which now runs everything. As a result, the women lost their budget, their magazine, and control over the curriculum. In short, the women lost the Relief Society. It became an appendage to the correlated priestly control." That's from Talk 6 Zion. Quote, "The presence, the central role, the importance of mothers who have done the work of perpetuating the species, bringing to pass the continual presence of man on earth, The presence of women and their integral role in the whole of it is something in the Christmas story that we ought to take a moment to reflect on as well, and not forget the vital importance of what women have and are and do and will do. Let's labour together to return to the original vision and instructions Joseph and Emma laid out pertaining to the role of women for the gathering in of the last days, that the spirit and record of heaven cannot be restrained from associating with us. If the intention of our hearts is pure, we will receive guidance and instruction on how to pattern our gatherings. As we are humble and repentant, we are promised to be guided by the Holy Spirit within our communities. I do not believe this was ever meant to be an institutionalized, correlated, or top-down endeavor, but rather free individual circles of women within circles of women acting independently and yet united in the work and sphere each are guided to, according to the Lord's direction to them. Therefore, the records we keep, our minutes, our history, our sermons, our journals, our admonitions, our successes, and the lessons we learn will set a very real permanence of women-led ministry within this continuing restoration, which defines the importance of our divine role as sisters in Zion. From Preserving the Restoration, quote, "Every dispensation of the gospel has only left a remnant. Christ's work is designed to preserve a remnant. At the end, he will gather all remnants together. The restoration given through the prophet Joseph Smith has also put itself into a position where it can only produce a remnant. The original restoration begun through Joseph Smith must resume. We must remember. All who will remember will constitute a remnant that will be preserved and not abandoned by God. Hearken, and lo, a voice as one sent down from on high, who is mighty and powerful, whose going forth is unto the ends of the earth, yea, whose voice is unto men. Prepare you all the way of the Lord, and make his paths straight. The keys of the kingdom of God are committed unto man on the earth, and from thence shall the gospel roll forth unto the ends of the earth, as the stone which is cut out of the mountain without hand shall roll forth until it has filled the whole earth. Yea, a voice crying, prepare you all the way of the Lord. Prepare for the supper of the Lamb. Make ready for the bridegroom. Pray unto the Lord. Call upon his holy name. Make known his wonderful works among the people. Call upon the Lord, that his kingdom may go forth upon the earth, that the inhabitants thereof may receive it, and be prepared for the days to come, in the which the Son of Man shall come down in heaven, clothed in the brightness of his glory, to meet the kingdom of God, which is set up on the earth. Wherefore may the kingdom of God go forth, that the kingdom of heaven may come, that you, O God, may be glorified in heaven, so on earth, that your enemies may be subdued. For yours is the honour, power, and glory forever and ever. Amen." And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, this is called Psalm of the Mother, Father, and Child, written by Carleen Loveland-Taylor. Come, take a little hand and wipe away a tear. You and I are formed from all eternity, not this place of hazards, seconds in mortality and so-called wisdoms. Tears roll from our hearts, blend in grief together, the catalyst of knowledge. Elohims apply the healing balm for you and me, my child. Joining, we examine our hearts.
Hearts we hold in weary hands. Your heart, my child, your child. A cosmic crash of creation's sacrifice, offering knowledge and intelligence. They said, "Let there be light." And the universes shook with pain of birthing. Knowing as light is gained, existence shatters and breaks as if irreparable. And what is true? The mighty Elohim hold each within immortal palms, protects, guards, and comforts, loves, understands, and forgives, even what appears unforgivable. Nothing is lost from Elohim hands or heart being. Your mother never leaves you. She is a forever advocate, repairer of broken vases, made perfect as never before, perfected. You, my child in embryo, were formed as strands of eternal light, woven with passion in the heart of your glorious mother, my deepest love, my forever dance partner. I am your father, your infinite protector. We, the mother and father Elohim, create all life. See beyond the moment of this dark place. Look up. Your Elohim wave to you and say, "Come. Come taste the living waters. You are within the tree of life. You danced always and will dance again. Delight in the healing waters of our forever garden. Future Elohims, eternal children, indestructible. You bravely carry forward, often dripping with both joy, knowledge, and pain. You, our children, are made of all eternity. We, the Elohim, hold you safely. Come, take a little hand and wipe away a tear." Thank you, Carleen.
My name is Tania Leavitt. I want to express my gratitude to Eva for asking me to share thoughts and experiences from my life. It's been very therapeutic for me. I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, and was a faithful and active member of the LDS Church until May 2015, when I felt that I needed to remove my name from the church records. I'm a widow with 3 grown children. I live with my 2 sons in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and my daughter lives in Alva, Oklahoma. My mind has been drawn to the word faith. The glossary in the Restoration edition of the Scriptures states, "Faith, more than belief, a principle of action that requires one to act on belief in order to produce faith." What does this mean? For me, it has meant holding on to the belief that my Heavenly Father and my Savior Jesus Christ exist, and that my Savior is willing to walk with me through the trials of my life. As I have held to that belief and strive to establish a relationship with Him, I have learned that He will get me through any difficult situation. One of my favorite scriptures in the Book of Mormon is Ether 5:2. "And now I, Moroni, would speak somewhat concerning these things. I would show unto you the world that faith is things which are hoped for and not seen. Wherefore dispute not, because ye see not. For ye receive no witness until after the trial of your faith." In 1988, at the age of 20, I joined the Utah Air National Guard. I thought this would be a great way to travel and see the world and get paid. I was not prepared for what I would face in basic training. For me, it was a mental attack with physical hardships every day. I turned my heart and mind to the Lord. He gave me the strength to face each confrontation from the instructors and the ability to complete each task they required of me. For 6 weeks, the Lord walked with me. I gained the understanding that I was not alone and that I could face anything with Him by my side. Deuteronomy 31:8. "And the Lord, He is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed." In 1990, I got married. The relationship became filled with conflict shortly after we were married, and I knew I had made a mistake. I pleaded with the Lord for understanding. How could I be so deceived? And how was I to overcome the problems? After months of crying unto the Lord, I felt it was okay for me to walk away from the marriage. It was a difficult decision. The Lord walked with me through the feelings of shame, failure, and discouragement and depression. I felt lost and unsure of myself. I needed guidance to know what to do next. I received a message from the Lord that the desires of my heart would not be met until I had served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Philippians 1:8. Wherefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you, both desire and to do his good pleasure. I did not want to serve a mission. However, the desire of my heart was to find a husband who would be my eternal companion. In April of 1992, I left to serve in the Florida Tampa mission. It was a very challenging experience for me. People were very devoted to their respective religions and were not interested in hearing the message that we had to share. I struggled to be away from my family with little to no contact. I struggled to follow mission rules that did not make sense to me. I met many wonderful people, and 3 of them had the desire to be baptized. However, I felt I had failed the Lord and returned home with a heavy heart. I eventually came to realize that the mission had been for my own spiritual growth and development. I was blessed to gain a testimony of Joseph Smith's mission and what he was called to do as a prophet of God. Deep within my heart, I knew he was an honest and trustworthy man who could not be a polygamist. Although I did not share that thought until a few years ago, my love and understanding of the Book of Mormon began on my mission. A month after I returned home from my mission, in November of 1993, I met my husband, Chris. I was very unsure of myself and my ability to choose the right companion. I asked the Lord for answers, and I heard him tell me that Chris was the man I was to marry. The Lord had fulfilled his words to me, and I was humbled. Chris and I were married in March 1994 in the Las Vegas Temple. I became pregnant a couple of months later. I was very sick from the start, and the doctor could not regulate my blood pressure. I was put on bed rest for 2 months before ending up in the hospital. I was informed that Ryan was not getting enough nutrients to grow, and that I needed an emergency C-section. He was born January 6, 1995, at 33 weeks. He was my miracle baby, as we were unsure if he was going to make it. Later, I was informed that I should not have any more children because I would not survive another pregnancy. Through it all, we trusted the Lord. In 1999, Chris and I decided to adopt. We had been praying for more children and felt this was the way. In January 2001, we were asked if we would consider becoming foster parents. It was a difficult decision because there were no guarantee that it would lead to adoption. We sought the Lord's counsel and trusted in him. After 18 months, we eventually were allowed to officially adopt our daughter, Mandy, and our son, Aaron, who were siblings. Foster adoption brought a whole different set of struggles. When Chris and I were at odds, the Lord would patiently remind me that Chris was my companion and that I needed to keep working through it. The Lord would give me peace and strength. Little did I realize that I was being prepared for one of the most difficult situations that I would face. After 20 years of marriage, Chris and I began realizing that we needed to build a better relationship as a husband and wife. Chris was a very gentle man. He was very willing to quickly forgive others. I learned the importance of forgiveness from his example. He treated me with respect and love. He refused to engage in arguments with me. He was patient with my emotional up and downs. Our relationship began to change, and our love for one another grew. The Lord helped me become a better wife. In January 2016, Chris was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Words cannot describe the thoughts and feelings that came with that diagnosis. Chris had been a very healthy man for 22 years we had been together. We pleaded with the Lord for healing. Chris started radiation and chemo treatments immediately after the diagnosis. Chris began to do extensive research on cancer and cancer treatments. He was suffering from the ill effects of cancer treatment. He looked and felt like he was dying. He was determined to beat the cancer, but decided medical treatments were not the answer. He decided to try homeopathic remedies. We continued to plead with the Lord for healing, and as we worked with homeopathic remedies and a diet change, Chris began to feel better. The doctor told us that the tumor in his colon had disappeared, and we knew that the Lord had answered our prayers. We expressed deep appreciation for the Lord's blessing. He worked for one of the Walmart distribution centers unloading boxes. He was concerned because he began to feel pain in his lower back. We returned to the doctor, and he told Chris that the blood work indicated his tumor markers had gone up. The cancer had returned, but to a different part of his body. He estimated that Chris had 6 months to live. I was confused and afraid. Why had the cancer returned? I pleaded with the Lord for understanding. I heard the Lord tell me that he needed to bring Chris home. As I cried and wanted to know why, he gave me peace and comfort and prepared me for Chris's death. Isaiah 41:10. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Chris continued to live life to the fullest for a few more months. We took the family on a vacation. We went everywhere together. We took advantage of the time we had, always hoping for more. Chris was determined to beat the cancer. He was not going to give up living. A week before Christmas, he started having trouble getting out of bed and walking. One night, he looked at me and said, "It is time for him to leave." We cried and prayed together for the strength to accept the Lord's will. 3 days later, he passed away. We had been given 11 months to experience joy and sadness in ways we had never experienced before. I know the Lord walked with us through the journey. The last year of our life together was an amazing blessing. We had grown closer together as husband and wife, companions and friends. It has been difficult for me to understand why the Lord would cut our journey together so short. We still had much to learn to become eternal companions. I have faith that one day the Lord will give me the understanding I desire. Chris struggled at times with depression. He also had some OCD traits. At times, it made life for me very difficult. He also had a tendency to be very casual about serious situations, which would really irritate me. After Chris passed, I came to realize that there are things that just don't or shouldn't matter. It has been 7.5 years since he passed, and I miss him every day. It has been hard to travel through life without him. Even now, I still have moments of overwhelming grief. Sometimes I am blessed to feel his presence near me. However, I'm aware every day of the Lord and his presence as I make this journey without Chris. Whenever I am discouraged, my boys remind me that if I just have faith, the Lord will get me through it. I continually ask if the Lord will allow Chris and I to be together when this life passes. I have received hope and comfort from the words given through Denver Snuffer from the Answer and Covenant. Marriage is necessary for the exaltation of the man and woman, and is ordained by me through the Holy Spirit of promise. Or in other words, by my covenant, my law, and my authority. Like the marriage at Eden, marriage is a sacrament for a sacred place, on holy ground, in my presence, or where the Holy Spirit of promise can minister. But rebellion has kept mankind from inheriting what I ordained in the beginning. And therefore, women and men have been left to marry apart from me. Every marriage established by me requires that I be a part of the covenant for it to endure. For endless is my name, and without me the marriage cannot be without end. For so long as I endure, it shall also endure. If it is made by my word and covenant. But know also that I can do my work at any time, for I have sacred space above, and can do my work despite earth and hell. I know it will depend upon my faith, my repentance, and my obedience to the Lord. I wait and watch for the Lord's return and pray that I will be ready to meet him. 2 Nephi, this is the conclusion. 2 Nephi chapter 9, verse 23. And in that day thou shalt say, O Lord, I will praise thee, though thou wast angry with me. Thine anger is turned away, and thou comfortest me. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord Jehovah is my strength and my song. He also is become my salvation. Therefore, with joy shall ye draw water out of the wells of salvation. And in that day shall ye say, Praise the Lord, call upon his name. Declare his doings among the people. Make mention that his name is exalted. Sing unto the Lord, for he hath done excellent things. This is known in all the earth. Cry out and shout, thou inhabitant of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel in the midst of thee. The Lord continues to bless my life beyond measure. I am grateful for his guidance, direction, comfort, and peace. I know there are lessons to be learned with each trial given. I am grateful for the understanding when given of their purpose. He has blessed me with my sister, Paula Hurst, as an amazing friend and support. My mom and dad are wonderful parents who are a strength and support to me. I love the Lord and am humbled at his sacrifice and love for me. Praise be to the Father and his Son. And I hope someday I can meet Tania.
Good afternoon. Eva asked me to do this clear back in December, and I was so excited because she knows that I gather with a group of women on a monthly basis and discuss women in the scriptures or issues that have to do with women and our Heavenly Mother and things like that. And so it's just a wonderful opportunity to be able to be with you tonight or today. And I would ask for the Spirit to be with me, because if it's not, I get hives when I'm nervous. So a little prayer would be nice. So it's my pleasure to speak to you today about the women in Samaria that we all know as the women at the well. I believe the Lord inspired me to talk about her, because as we've been going through the stories in the scriptures, this woman just kept on my mind, and when something keeps on your mind, you know that you need to investigate it. Since then, she has become a cherished and a beloved friend. I guess as I meet monthly with my friends to study these women in the scriptures, our group continues to grow, even though we don't physically embody, because these women are here with us. They want us to know their stories. Most of us know the women at the well through the writings of the Apostle John and found in the 4th chapter of his gospel. The same story is recorded in the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, which I have here with me. Hopefully, you are all familiar with this beautiful book. It's the complete Gospel of Mary Magdalene. I've chosen to use both texts today, depending on which is the more comprehensive narrative of this story. And I love the rendition of Mary, so that is what I'm going to be reading from today. I also have her description on the table if anybody wants it. I grew up in a tradition of handouts, as you probably all have, but you don't need to do that if you don't want to. She speaks in Aramaic, and so the names are different. So I may replace Yeshua with Jesus, Johann for John, Yaakov, which is Jacob, Joseph for Joseph. I'll try to read it in English, but once in a while, because I've read this so many times and I'm familiar with it in the other language, I might slip. So hopefully you'll recognize who I'm talking about. So, in the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, it begins, when Jesus knew that the Pharisees had heard that he was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although he himself did not baptize, but his disciples, he departed Judah again and departed into Galilee. He needed to pass through Samaria, so he came to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. The well of Jacob was there, and Yeshua there there I go. And Jesus, being tired from his journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman?" Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of the Spirit and who it is who says to you, 'Give me drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Rabbi, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From where then have you this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his cattle?" Jesus answered her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again. The water of which I speak comes from a well that will never run dry, but whosoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never thirst again. For the water that I will give him will become in him a well of water springing up into eternal life." The woman said to him, "Rabbi, give me this water so that I do not get thirsty, neither come all the way here to draw." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come see." And the woman answered, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You spoke well. You said, 'I have no husband.' You have had 5 husbands, and he whom you now have is not your husband. This you have said truly." So let's pause here in the narrative so that we can catch up on what's going on. First, I assume that you all are aware of the animosity between the Jews and the Samaritans. So I'm going to skip over that. It all had to do with them being taken to Assyria centuries before, and the ones that remained or came back intermarried, and they were considered unclean to the Jews. So they didn't have anything to do with each other. The second thing we need to identify is what we know about Jacob's well. This is the well that Jacob and his sons dug when they returned to their covenant land following Jacob's servitude to Laban, Leah and Rachel's brother. The land was just outside of Sychar, which is the land in Christ's time that was known as Samaria. Following the exodus of Egypt, 40 years of wandering in the desert, Joseph divided this land, all this land, among the 12 tribes, and this parcel was returned to Joseph because that is the one that was originally given it by Jacob. As I pondered on the nature of this event, several questions came to my mind. For instance, why did Christ seek this well? Why this woman? And why a private conversation which was breaking all barriers between men and women, and particularly a Samaritan woman? So in preparation for this talk, I read a lot of accounts. I read several secular books on it, and none of them were very enlightening to me. So I did what I should have done in the first place, and I turned to the Word found in the Scriptures. I thought the scholars would have the answers, but they did not. I learned what I learned several years ago when I asked Jesus Christ to be my prophet. He is the one that teaches me. As far as the woman in the well, we don't know and are not told what her backstory is, and the list of reasons why she came at that time of day, at 12 noon or the 6th hour, which is Hebrew terms, is left to us to only guess. And unfortunately, the circumstances that affect women are not considered. A quick look at a woman in the Scriptures easily identifies a widowhood or divorce, which is easily granted. She could have been, I need to slow down. Could have been busy with other daily errands. We simply don't know, but we'll tackle that later on in this talk. So we have Jesus asking her for a drink of water. And Jesus answered, if you knew who this was. If you knew the gift of the Spirit and who says, give me a drink of water, you would have asked him and he would have given it to you. So the woman says, Rabbi, you have nothing to draw with. Where then have you this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well? Yeshua answered her, everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again. The water of which I speak comes from a well that will never run dry. But whosoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never thirst again. For the water that I will give him will become in him a well water springing up into eternal life. The conversation exchanged in these few verses leads us to understand that this woman is well versed in her scriptures. She understands quickly that Jesus is not talking about physical thirst, but spiritual thirst. And isn't this water we all long for? Has it not become routine in our lives to carry a bottle of water with us so we can always be hydrated? I'll bet every one of you have a bottle of water with you. Our body needs water to survive. Our Savior is promising to each of us that as we continually turn to Him, He will provide the hydration our spirits need. He truly is the fount of every blessing. The woman recognizes the gift of this Spirit that Jesus is offering her and calls him Rabbi, as she identifies Jacob as a father and respectfully asks Jesus if he is greater than Jacob. To this, Jesus answers, those who drink from Jacob's well will thirst again. But whoso drinks of the water that he will give him will never thirst, for the water that he will give him will become a well of water springing up into eternal life. The woman said, Rabbi, give me this water. The woman is converted. She's converted instantly. Jesus says to her, go call your husband and come here. And the woman answered, I have no husband. This interaction is the main reason for generations of Bible readers, as well as scholars, calling her sketchy. There couldn't be any other reason why a woman would have 5 husbands. Possible widowhood and divorce have already been mentioned, but a husband is defined in the Bible as also a husbandman. This term can mean a tenant or farmer, and since the Assyrian conquest was hundreds of years previous to 33 AD, Samaria had been governed by 4 additional nations, including the Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and were currently under the control of Rome. Each empire could rightly be the husbandman of Samaria. Jesus also acknowledges both the man she was living with currently and her country, specifically the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, which occupy Samaria, were not married to the true husband. The scriptures refer to the husband as another name of Jesus Christ. He is the husband. All others, men and women included, or the church, are symbolically the wife, as Isaiah explains in chapter 54, verse 5. For thy Maker is thine husband, the Lord of hosts is his name, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the God of the whole earth shall he be called. This, of course, is only symbolically because, as Matthew records in Jesus' teachings regarding marriage in chapter 19, verse 5 and 6, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore, they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Always obedient to the will of the Father, our Savior lived and practiced what he preached. He too left his father and mother to cling to his eternal beloved companion, we know as Mary Magdalene, whose gospel and witness we are discussing today. It's all over the Bible. Jesus continues his dialogue with the woman without condemning or correcting her. And she continues her conversation saying, Rabbi, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. What do you say about this? The woman of Samaria is not timid in conversing with the Lord. We know through her conversation with Jesus that she was familiar with temple worship. The temples would worship at Mount Gerizim, where Elijah challenged the priest of Baal. Meanwhile, the Jews worshipped in Jerusalem at the temple built by Herod the Great. Yeshua said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour comes when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Spirit. You worship that which you know, and we worship that which we know." So I want you to stop and ponder that a minute. We worship that which we know. Isn't that profound? Jesus was not condemning the woman whose people worshiped in the mountain where the prophets taught. And he was not condemning the Jewish people as they were worshiping what they were taught. But he introduces a completely different idea as he continues the conversation. But the hour comes and is now here when all true worshipers will worship the Spirit in truth. I believe that statement deserves repeating as Jesus said to her. But the hour comes and now is here when all the true worshipers will worship the Spirit in truth. Now, after she let that settle, the woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah comes, and when he has come, he will declare to us all things." Jesus said to her, "I am he, the one who speaks to you." Jesus has just declared that he is the Messiah. He is the Lord of Lords, the Savior of the world, and he declares it to an unnamed woman at a well in the land of Samaria. I can only imagine how her heart swelled to bursting as she received the living water he most willingly gave. If you have seen the depiction on the TV show Chosen, I can imagine this to be exactly how this woman felt, running towards her town, laughing and crying at the same time. The words of Isaiah captured in Handel's Messiah soprano aria, "Rejoice, rejoice, rejoice greatly." You know that? I can't sing it, but that's it. She was thrilled. And from that city, she ran there singing to her people. And from that city, many of the Samaritans believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified, "He told me everything that I did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they begged him to stay with him, and he stayed there 2 more days. Many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, "Now we believe, not because of your speaking, for we've heard from ourselves and know that this is indeed the truth." Isn't that a beautiful story? We could end there and feel her joy, but I believe there's more to the story that could possibly help us identify who this woman is. My first question was, why did Jesus deliberately travel to Samaria to Jacob's well? In the book of Genesis, in chapter 12, verse 29, let's go to Joseph's blessing from Jacob. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. This happens to be a really long scripture, so I'm going to jump to the bottom. The blessings of your father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bounds of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. While Samaria has been unfaithful, Christ is merciful and always remembers his covenant. I believe this is connected to the second question I had, centered on the woman. Why did Jesus come to a woman and declare his messiahship? This question led me to the book of Hosea. If that's how you say it. The book of Hosea is set in 8th century BC as the northern kingdom is ripe into wickedness. Their sins are rampant, for they have forgotten their God and have replaced God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob with Baal, the storm god, and Asherah, the Canaanite fertility god. The Lord teaches Hosea that symbolically to do something very unconventional, which is go take a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So he went to Gomer, the daughter of Diblon, which conceived and bare him a son. Gomer goes on and bears 3 children. And the eldest, and the Lord commands Hosea to name him this name. His eldest son is named Jezreel, which means God will sow. The second child is a girl whom God told him to name Lo-Ramah, for I will no longer have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Great name for a girl, don't you think? The third child is a boy and is named Lo-Ammi, for ye are not my people and I will not be your God. To summarize the book of Hosea, the children's names, much like the symbolic names of Isaiah's 2 sons, explain that judgment is coming to the northern kingdom for their disobedience. Now, do these names refer to the original covenant given to Joseph? God will sow a fruitful bough whose branches run over the wall, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, for you are my people and I will not be your God. I suggest you read the book because it does end in a joyful note, because in the last days Ephraim repents and turns to the Lord. Because Yeshua always keeps his covenant, he will receive his repentant bride with joy because he has always loved her, or him, in meaning the church. Symbolically speaking, the woman of Samaria or Ephraim, is she meeting the righteous groom at the covenant well of Jacob? To further add to the idea of the husband coming to the bride, we know weddings are a part of the Gospel of John. It's in Gospel of John, Gospel of the Beloved Companion, Jesus and his mother and followers attended wedding dinner. This event leads to the first miracle, or the first sign of who Jesus is, by turning the water pots into the water in the water pots from water into wine. This miracle reveals that Jesus' identity as the bridegroom referred to in Scripture in Revelation 19. The location of this first sign at wedding connects Jesus with the wedding imagery used by prophets to symbolize Israel's restoration in Isaiah and Hosea. The second witness is declared by John the Baptist to his followers in chapter 3 of John. Ye yourself bear me witness that I said I am not the Christ, but I am sent before him. He that has the bride is the bridegroom. But the friend of the bridegroom which standeth and heareth him rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. This my joy therefore is fulfilled. So the identity begins to take shape. Jesus attends a wedding, symbolically showing the bridegroom is here. He is reaffirmed by a friend of the bridegroom in John the Baptist. Jesus is rejected by his bride, the southern kingdom of Israel, and so he moves on to reclaim the northern kingdom of Israel, whom he still has a covenant with, even though they have apostatized. Could there be a second reason the Lord sought this woman out? We know when we dig deeper into the Scriptures, we learn hidden meanings. That being said, let's turn to the water pots in the wedding at Cana. We find 6 pots there used for purification. Jesus used these sacred pots to turn water into wine, and in the Gospel of the Beloved Companion it says, Yeshua stood and raised his right hand and blessed the pots. So we know that a covenant was established with them. And it was 6. The number 6 in Hebrew is defined as connection, image, man, flesh, work, sacrifice, intimacy, knowledge, sacrifice, and love. Does this not fit a heavenly bridegroom? But is it also a number that represents incomplete? Perhaps the bridegroom is looking for a 7th pot so he can be complete. Perhaps he knows the 7th pot will be reclaimed at a covenant well in a previous unfaithful land of Samaria through a lonely woman left holding the pot. Perhaps the faithful had already been transplanted to a distant shore far across the ocean many years ago, say perhaps the tribe of Joseph with the families of Lehi, Nephi, and Ishmael. Could this be why Jesus sought out a woman, because the covenant men were nowhere to be found? And I confess this is only speculation on my part, but it's speculation. As we look to the women and the Hebrew number 7, we find rest, cessation from work, holiness, complete, ripe, order, stability, and holiness. With the number 6, we have the attributes of a man. With the number 7, we have the attributes of a couple. Interesting, don't you think? And additionally, this number 7 could also relate to the 7 churches we read about in Revelation, or perhaps to all of them, or to both of them. Let's add the number 12. Remember the story of the woman suffering from the issue of blood? This unnamed woman had suffered continually for 12 years. Her condition kept her isolated and alone. Her very presence in society reflected on those around her and made them unclean. The faith she had to have to submit to possible humiliation she might bring to herself and to those around her didn't hold her back. She courageously but gently touched the garment of Jesus, believing if she but touch his clothes, she would be made whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed. And skipping to, because of time, and he said unto her, Daughter, with a capital D, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of your plague. The number 12 occurs again in the same day as Jesus continues on an errand to heal the daughter Jairus, who was gravely ill. As he was traveling there, it is reported that he is no longer needed, as the young girl had passed away. But Jesus, never to be dissuaded, continues to the man's house, where he finds the household weeping and mourning. Jesus requests that no man follow him save Peter, James, and John. And he took the damsel by the hand and said unto her, Talitha cumi, which is being interpreted, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel arose and walked, for she was at the age of 12 years, and astonished with great astonishment. So what does the number 12 have to do with the women at the well? 12 is a very prophetic number. We know that there are 12 apostles and 12 tribes and 12 signs of the zodiac and 12 stations of the moon. Could the 12 represent Christ's governing authority in this instance, to still as it is on earth, as it is in heaven? The woman, the daughter, and now perhaps the woman at the well who met the Savior at 12 noon. I believe the bridegroom came looking for his bride at this well and did what has been done at other times in scriptures. He was looking for a bride, in this instance, a whole nation. Or another part of his church. The woman says, why would a Jew ask for a drink from a Samaritan? Jesus responds, if you knew the gift of the Spirit who you are talking to, you would have asked me for a drink, and I would have given you living water. The Samaritan drops her water pot and runs to her home to tell everyone that the Messiah has returned. Yet, again, another symbol relating to marriage, as summarized in Matthew. The kingdom of heaven is like unto the certain king, which made a marriage for his son. He sends forth his servants to bid his friends come. But the invited guests declined the invitation. The servants are instructed, Go ye therefore into the highways, and invite anyone who would come. This the woman of the well did with great joy. Her neighbors accepted the invitation and did come to the wedding feast. Why would people come to see Jesus? Perhaps it is because they believed her. Perhaps the narrative ascribed to her for 2,000 years is not what has been traditionally taught. I would suggest to you that she was believed because the people knew and respected her. Because of her word, Jesus and the disciples were welcomed to Samaria and taught for an additional 2 days. And thus the encounter with the Samaritan woman ends. Or does it? There is more to the story. While conversing with the Lord, had Jesus just fulfilled his own prophecy? The hour comes when now is here when all true worshipers will worship in the spirit of truth. While conversing with the Lord through the veil, conversing with the Lord at the well, did she at this hour become a daughter of God? Do signs really follow those who believe? As I continued reading the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, I was excited to discover Mary Magdalene tells us the name of the Samaritan woman. When it becomes impossible for Jesus to walk freely among the people due to the possibility of entrapment by Jewish authorities, he departs the country and goes to the city called Ephraim. There among friends, he taught them, "The kingdom is like a man who had a treasure hidden in his field, but did not know it." Then the disciple Salome, the woman who had given Yeshua water to drink at the well of Jacob, asked him, "Rabbi, how shall I find my treasure?" And Jesus said to her, "If you do not fast from the world, you will not find the kingdom. Only the truth. I tell you, unless you overcome the ruler of the world, you will never know the Spirit and discover that which lies within you." At that last verse, "If you not fast from the world, you will not find the kingdom," it's a subject for an entirely different study that can be found in the Gospel of Beloved Companion. I highly recommend it. But one more time, Salome is again named following Mary Magdalene's visit to the tomb and her encounter with the risen Christ, wherein it reads, and I'm going to do this in her vernacular. "The Magdala therefore returned unto her own, and there in that place were gathered Martha her sister, Eleazar her brother, whom Yeshua had restored to life, and Miriam the mother of Yaakov, Joseph, and Salome. And then also Tama, who was called the twin, and Joseph of Arimathea, who had asked Pilate for the body of Yeshua, and Nicodemus, who at first came to Yeshua by night, and who had brought spices for his burial. And there were disciples Levi, who some have called Matthew, and Joanna, and the other Salome, to whom Yeshua had spoken to at the well of Yaakov." Salome has by this time become a faithful friend and disciple of Jesus Christ. She gathers with some of his most trusted inner circle. The Eastern Orthodox tradition records that Salome was present on the day of Pentecost and was baptized by one of the 12 apostles and given the name of Fotini, meaning the enlightened one. Salome's story doesn't end there. The Eastern Orthodox holds Fotini in such high esteem. Her missionary work with her sons and sisters is legendary. There are several versions of her work recorded by different Orthodox churches. They are all very similar and have included in this paper. I will share my testimony of one of the versions, but also let you know that this woman studying about her has enriched my life immeasurably. She's remarkable. The threads that have woven the picture I now have of her is unique and sacred relationship that she has with the Lord, and they've touched me deeply. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard about Saint Fotini. Due to time, I don't think I'll go over all of it, but right after Peter and Paul were crucified, she I'll call her Fotina from now on, since that was her new name. She and her 5 sisters and 2 sons become evangelists, and they go to Carthage, and they are very influential there. This was during the reign of Emperor Nero, and because of his excessive cruelty, they were advised not to come, and they did anyway. Her son was blinded because he wouldn't stop preaching in Christianity, and eventually regained his sight. And the prison he was put in, people would come to him and 2 others to receive Christianity, and their prison became known as, it smelled good and it was a place of light. And this enraged Emperor Nero. So he ordered the saints to be brought before him, and he asked them whether they truly believed in Christ. All the confessors refused to renounce the Savior. The emperor gave them orders to smash the martyrs' fingers joints. During the torture, the confessors felt no pain, and their hands remained unharmed. Nero ordered that Sebastian, who is one of their followers, Photinus and Joseph, be blinded. Okay, I already said that. 3 years had passed, and Nero sent to prison one of his servants who had found out that these 3 had all regained their sight. Nero then gave orders to crucify saints and to beat their naked bodies with straps. On the fourth day, the emperor sent servants to see whether the martyrs were still alive. Approaching the place of tortures, the servants fell blind, and an angel of the Lord freed the martyrs from the crosses and healed them. The saints took pity on the blinded servants and restored their sight to the prayers of the Lord, because of the prayers to the Lord. Those who were healed came to believe in Christ and soon were baptized. In a rage, Nero gave orders to flay the skin of Saint Fotini and to throw her down a well. The three men had their legs cut off and were thrown to dogs, and then their skin flayed. The sisters, who also suffered terribly, Nero gave orders to cut off their breasts and flay their skin. An expert in cruelty, the emperor readied the fiercest execution for one of the sisters by tying her feet to the tops of two bent-over trees. When the ropes were cut, the trees sprang upright and tore the martyr apart. The emperor ordered the others beheaded. Saint Fotini was removed from the well and locked up in prison for 20 days. After this, Nero and Saint Fotino brought to him and asked if she would now relent and offer sacrifice to idols. Saint Fotini spat in his face and, laughing at him, said, "Oh, most impious of the blind, you profligate and stupid man, do you think me so deluded that I would consent to renounce my Lord Christ instead of offer sacrifices to idols as blind as you?" Hearing such words, Nero gave orders to throw Saint Fotini down a well, where she surrendered her soul to God in the year 66. I want to bear witness as I stand in awe of these remarkable women who endured or had exceptional courage and faith. We don't know what challenges we will personally face in the coming future. Perhaps we will be found in a situation that would cause us profound humiliation or have a personal faith crisis, such as some of the women I talked about and some of the women we've talked about today, like Emma. What kind of women are we that will stand against this kind of persecution and this kind of these kind of trials? Do these signs really follow people who believe? I say yes, these are exceptional women because they chose to believe. They didn't set up boundaries, keeping them from gaining further light and knowledge. They chose to act, and that is what we as women of faith must do. Without faith, we are nothing. With faith, we are capable of doing great things through our Lord Jesus Christ. I pray that each of us continue each day on our own personal journey to Christ. May we join someday the sisterhood of these faithful women through the ages. Sorry.
I loved your talk. Thank you. I love bringing out women in Scripture, because we've been erased for so long. And I don't even know how many years, but for many years I have just clung to, we believe that God will yet reveal many great and important things pertaining to the kingdom of God. And for me, that's the prophetesses and the writings of women and the journals. And, that's the woman that has been erased, I think, from our history and our scriptures. So I love that talk, and it made me think, as I was sitting there going, I was just praying, I don't really have time to prepare. And is this another of those, take no thought, I will give you what, and the Lord's like, yes. I'm like, oh, shoot, because it's fun to be prepared, right? So anyway, but I also just wanted to add, and that I can get to a little bit later, but I love that you brought out the New Testament women. I also love the Old Testament women. Lot's wife is one of my soul sisters who I had an experience with, who told me to look into her story, and it's profound and amazing to me, and she is a type of Christ that we need to know about and hold in very high regard. And we have Eve, who, my gosh, another soul sister, right? And one of my favorite stories, 2 Kings 22, and if that's wrong, then it's somewhere around there, the story of Huldah, which turned my whole world upside down when I found Huldah. Oh, did you already?
She's the next one I'm studying.
Okay, yay! I'm excited to hear that. Huldah, Deborah is a rock star, and we have a little bit of information about her. And when you look at, I shouldn't be critical, but like the manuals that we used to teach from the doctor. Yes, thank you. Manuals. If I can't lose a word, please help, because no offense will be taken. My brain is going to need some help. Anyway, it was about friendship and what a good friend Deborah was. I was like, can you add the word prophetess, please? Right? And so Huldah, what do you guys know the whole story of Huldah? It was who was rebuilding the temple? But I think it's Josiah. Let's see. Is it Josiah? Let's see. Okay, you guys probably said it and I wasn't listening. So the king, I only have the king on mine, but did you look it up? It's 2 Kings 22 and right before 12. But it's Josiah. It is, I think it's Josiah. So, okay, and I love this because it says, and the king commanded Hilkiah the priest. So the king, this is the king, and he commands the priest and the son, and Ahikam, the son of Shaphan. You should always get in front of a crowd and start reading Old Testament names if you want to sound smart, right? And Akbor, the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan, the scribe, and Ahiah, the servant of the king. And you should do it in sunglasses too. Let's see, the servant. Anyway, he had this coalition of men that included his priest, his scribe, all of the great men. This is the king. So what had happened is, I think it was Hilkiah had just found the book in the rubble of the temple, the book of scripture that would told them what they were supposed to be doing. And he was like, holy cow, brought it to the king. The king reads it and rents his clothes because he sees how far off they have become through the traditions of their fathers. I wonder if there's any connection to us today. We can think about that. But anyway, so the king sends this coalition of men to go. He says, go, this is what he tells them. Go ye, inquire of the Lord for me and for the people and for all Judah concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book. My gosh, are there any parallels for us today? To do according to that which is written concerning us. So Hilkiah wants the word of the Lord from the priest, right? And he sends this coalition. This is one of my favorite scriptures. So Hilkiah the priest and Ahikam the Akbar and blah, 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 and all of the rest of them went unto Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, and gives her the keeper of the wardrobe. Now she dwelled in Jerusalem in the college, and they communed with her. When the king sent the priest and the coalition based on scripture to find the word of the Lord, they went to Huldah. Right? That's crazy. How do we ignore this? This should tell us something when we're formulating our ideas of the economy of God, of how God works. And she says twice in the very next two scriptures, she says, thus saith the Lord, thus saith the Lord. So, that's a pretty cool story. So I love finding the women in the scriptures because it helps connect us to ourselves, because we have been so separated from ourselves and hidden from ourselves. As we've hidden women from the world, we've hidden women from ourselves as well. And so that gets us, thank you for bringing that up. And I'll share really quickly too, because I'm off script, so I can say whatever I want to. I'll share quickly my theory of the Book of Mormon. One of my theories of the Book of Mormon, because the Bible, there's not a lot of women in the Bible, right? like the ratio of men to women named in the Bible, and I can't remember what it is, but I did a paper on it a while ago, many years ago, so that's why I can't remember. But it's a pretty, like, multiple time difference, right? And that's interesting, you know. It's like, okay, I mean, yeah, we always say women were too busy taking care of the children to write, but men would have been out farming, right? Anyone can write. And so I love that Isaiah refers to his wife as the prophetess, and there's a lot of hints, but there's not a lot of women. The New Testament, we have a similar problem, and one of the things I loved that Kathy read were the verses about Jesus having so many women in his group of disciples, and it is beyond offensive to me when defenders of polygamy use that scripture to claim that Jesus was a polygamist. Because he couldn't have been around women if not. So, okay, so there are a bunch of men named. Were they also all in relationships with Jesus, right? Was he married to all of his disciples? Or is it just that you have to insist that women be so invisible that the only way they could possibly ever be named is if they're married, is if they're a wife? Right? Let's stop hiding from ourselves. Or, I mean, we've got to stop hiding and demeaning women to the point that we accuse Jesus of being a polygamist just because there are women that he associated with. Like, come on. Yeah. So, back to, the Book of Mormon. So in the New Testament, we also have quite a few women named, way more men. And then we get to the Book of Mormon. And are you kidding me? We have 3 named female characters, right? We have Sarah and Eve and Mary that are named, but they're not characters in the Book of Mormon. They're referred to. But we have Sariah. It starts out pretty awesome. Like, if anyone hasn't watched my episode on Sariah, I love Sariah, and her story is amazing. And she was the absolutely essential matriarch for that group. And the Lord prepared her through her own experiences to be the powerful matriarch she was, so that she was strong when Lehi had his falling out with the Lord and murmured against the Lord, which, by the way, look at the chapter heading of that. I hope people have watched my Sariah episode, because I love that story. But we have Sariah, and then we have Huldah, and then we have Isabel the harlot. Those are the 3 women we get in the Book of Mormon. Oh, I said Huldah. I meant Abish. We have Abish. 3 hours of sleep is going to be my excuse for everything in this talk. So yes, it's Abish, not Huldah. She's the Old Testament. And Abish is awesome in her own right. But I'm like, this is the restoration scripture, and we have 3 women, and that bothered me for a long time. So this is my own little personal, like, as I pondered on that, I kind of just had a theory develop in my mind, and you know, I can't claim it definitively as inspiration, but it sure has felt good to me. And this is what I think is happening personally. We believe the Book of Mormon expands and clarifies the Bible, right? It fills in the gaps of the Bible. And this is what I think is happening. I think that the Lord is giving us the Bible and saying, can you see that woman has been removed? Can you see that you're missing women? Can you be bothered by that? And apparently we couldn't see that. So the Lord gave us the Book of Mormon to say, now can you see it? We have one powerful woman in the beginning of the Book of Mormon, and then woman completely. I mean, we have the amazing stories of the daughters of the Lamanites, and we have a lot of amazing stories of women. But I think that the Lord is telling us, hey, I want you to eat what's on your plate and then ask for more. I think that the Lord is telling us, study out what you can about women and then plead for more, because I'm anxious to reveal more. That's what I think God is saying. So there's my little sidetrack into that topic. Now, kind of setting up what I was thinking of speaking about a little bit. Emma Smith, I'm sorry, I can't. It's hard to talk about Emma without. Oh, goodness sakes. Emma has a very core place in my heart. So I don't always talk about these details because it does me better to not. But those who know my story know that I lost a little girl in 2020. And I lost her little sister in 2021. And those were hard years for many, many reasons. But there is something about losing a nursing baby that not only, like, even if you have a moment, you don't have a moment to not think about it. But even if you, like, you are reminded physically, constantly of your loss. And so I would, the Lord helped me a lot through that, but it was really hard. But I was given so many moments of clarity and so much help. There was one day I was sitting doing the dishes and just not doing well. And I was standing doing the dishes. I don't do the dishes sitting. And I just had this kind of idea of, if Avonlea were asleep in the other room right now, I would be so thankful for this time to do the dishes, right? I would be so thankful for this little, like being able to get something done. And then, I'm always trying to think in positive ways the best I can. I don't like, what a stupid thing to say, I don't like grief. I'm sure you all love grief, but I don't like grief. I do not like being in that space. I like to, I came to believe to the core that everything God does is good. And that was kind of my mantra during those years and has been ever since. As I'm driving and getting a speeding ticket, okay, God, everything you do is good. So this is going to work out for the best somehow. But anyway, so as I had that thought, I was like, okay, if she were just asleep in the other room, I'd be thankful. It's only my thinking right now that's making me suffer so much. And the Lord just came through with this insight. She is just asleep in the other room. And it's like, you're right. I just get a little bit longer break to do the dishes right now. And but the other thing that happened continually during those years of losing my two little girls, when I was struggling, which was all the time, but every single time I would just have this thought, Emma went on. Emma made it. Emma did it. Emma didn't quit. Emma survived and continued. And that got me through so profoundly, just knowing that, and if I'm speaking to anyone, I know we all have our tragedies, and I'm sure there are others here who have had tragedies, so I'm sorry that I'm speaking about mine, because life is challenging. But I just thought that I was having that thought, that Emma, like every time I would think about Emma, which was all the time, I would find comfort and I would find strength. And so fast forward to when I felt called to start this podcast. I was just told it's time, and I won't talk right now. I won't take time unless to talk about the experiences that led up to that. But it was a profound connection with what I will call the wisdom of the mothers that got me through some extremely difficult times. So I was told to start this podcast, and that was hard. So I still had 7 children at home at the time. I have 6 now. I have 1 starting a mission and doing great. Anyway, sorry, I'm just remembering those years. It was while I was pregnant with my little 13th that I was awakened by the ambulance in the driveway from my son's suicide attempt. So those were hard years, but he's doing great now, and he is happy and he is awesome. And those were just hard, heavy years. Anyway, get me back to where I was. What was I saying? Emma, was I talking about Emma? So yes, this is what it was. So I got going on this podcast, and it has proven to be challenging. And I love the research, and I'm thankful that I have received donations to pay for cleaners to come to my house, because it enables me to study without the burden of guilt and having half my brain on what's not getting done. I now only have 1/4 of my brain on what's not getting done, because my cleaners don't do the laundry and they don't do meals, and But I'm so thankful to have help. I love the research, the part where I honestly almost always like spend time on my knees going, Lord, do you want me to quit this podcast? Because it's so hard, is when I'm trying to take the research and outline it into an episode. Try to make it go from point A to point whatever with like a logical alphabet in between. It's so hard. It's so hard. And so there was an episode I was working on, and I can't remember which one it was, but I just like, it's overwhelmingly challenging and my brain just gets tired. And so I was just praying. I was like, Lord, I don't feel like, how I mentioned I have to get minute by minute instructions sometimes. I was like, I'm not getting much done. I just had this impression, go for a run. So I was like, okay, I haven't gone for a run. I'll go do that. So I went out and I was just talking to the Lord as I was out running and walking. And I have 13 children. I run as long as I can until I have to start walking so I don't wet my pants. So I'm sorry, TMI. Okay. So anyway, I was out running, walking, and just communing with the Lord. And I was praying. And I've had several experiences with different women that I know have been involved in this process. And I should also say, there are just so many details. But when I lost my second little girl, when I found out that we were going to lose my second little girl, both of those pregnancies, I had been distinctly told by the Lord, this baby needs to come. This is your baby, And after I had my first loss, I could not abide the thought of a 13th pregnancy. Pregnancy is hard, and I was 45. So it was hard physically. It just, not to mention mentally. And so when I was told to have her little sister, and what I was told was, you don't know what you want, because I was a mess, you don't know what you want, but if you trust me, I'll give you what you want. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about, are we having another one, are we not? Because grief brain is difficult. I was like, whatever we have is what the Lord wants, right? And so I was expecting my little 13th, my little Avery, and during COVID, both of them, stupid world we live in. Okay, I'm trying to start loving people again after 2020 and 2021. Those were hard years. Anyway, we had to find out on our own, I had to find a guy that was willing to give me an ultrasound, and we diagnosed my little girl on our own with Edwards syndrome. So I found out we wouldn't get to keep her. And part of this process with both was trying to understand how the Lord could be so cruel. Like I did, just how could you be so cruel? How could you give me these experiences and tell me to have these babies and then take them away? If I lost a child, that's one thing, but when you... Anyway, I've told this story a little bit. With my 11th, I was done. I was so done. And then he had health problems. And while I was expecting him, the Lord had told me, there's another one that needs to come. And I was like, so while my son was in the hospital for the first few months of his life, we didn't know if we'd get to keep him because of what the medical interventions did to him. Anyway, I now know that the Lord was preparing me for what was to come, but because there was no explanation for his health problems. But I would just be talking. I was like, Lord, I know you told me that there was another one, but then you should have sent a healthy one. I'm done, right? And so the Lord really, really taught me powerfully that we needed to have our little number 12. And that pregnancy was so difficult, but we had the most beautiful, beautiful little girl. So when she was taken, that was obviously challenging, and I had to really work out with the Lord how he could be so cruel. And then it was after losing her that I couldn't believe, in my mind, I thought, if she weren't my last, how can I end on a loss? Do you know how can I lose my baby and then never have another baby, But at the same time, how could I do this again? I could not possibly do this again. And that was the dilemma I was in when the Lord told me, I'll get what I want. So when I got pregnant with my 13th, I actually... I had to grieve all over again because I was feeling in my body the price I paid for my little girl I lost. And I knew that even paying that price wouldn't fix anything. I knew I was going to love this next little baby, but somehow in my mind it clicked in that, oh, there's no fixing this. I kind of thought having another baby would fix something, and I realized it wouldn't, you know? And so I worked through that, and then found out that we were going to lose our little 13th. And when the Lord had told me, if you trust me, I'll give you what you want. And so I could not, Lord, I can't lose you, but how can I trust you if you are this cruel? I couldn't understand. And the Lord said to me, I again while I was pregnant, I had both of my little girls come to me because I was in that grief process of, this isn't going to fix anything. And one day my two little girls came right here, just both of them on my chest, and this full awareness of who they were. And I'd already had some pretty profound experiences with my first little Avonlea, but this was both of them. And they let me know that they always wanted to be together. And I took that to mean, okay, that healed me at the time, because I thought, we won't have Avonlea, but we'll have Avery. I named her for her sister. We'll have Avery. And since she's here, we'll always have Avonlea too, because they'll always be together. That's what I thought it meant. Until I learned what it really meant. And so when I was just beaten down, and how could you do this? And in the meantime, I'm so sick and so in pain. That was an excruciating pregnancy. And the Lord just, no details, but just showed me, I just saw a conduit open that showed me without details my life with my little Asher, who's 6, my little curly redhead, as my youngest. And the Lord said, this is what you want. And in that moment, and I didn't know what that meant, but then in that moment came this awareness that these little girls were always supposed to be mine. And I was always supposed to be their mom, and they were always supposed to be sisters. And if we'd been able to keep Avonlea, we wouldn't have had Avery, right? And so that was the experience I had, and I constantly thought of Emma, because she didn't give up. So I was able to, with Edwards syndrome, about a third of the babies die while in utero. About a third die during birth, and then the other third die within the first few days of life, the first week of life, unless they have a lot of interventions. And I just knew that she was very, very severe. And so, so in the blackness, my friend who kept me alive, because I was planning to go with her. I was done. I was throwing in the towel at this point. And my friend tried to organize a fast. She was like, Michelle, can we have a fast for Avery? And I had learned with Avonlea that false hope, like trying, if you want to believe that faith is trying to control God, if I believe this enough, I'll get what I want. And I learned profoundly that it's actually the opposite. I learned the wording that I finally was able to put it in is, faith is not insisting on the miracle you want. Faith is loving the miracle you're given, right? That's what it is. It's everything God does is good, and my job is to navigate this with God, with trust in God. And God came through every time when I was just genuinely, horrified that God was so cruel. I could not understand that. So when the Lord let me see that, I was like, okay. So anyway, now I'm fast forwarding. So in a way, and it was in 2022, or in February, I think the end of January 2022, that I was told to start my podcast. And so, fast forwarding back to the story, because I do remember where I'm going with all of this, I was overwhelmed with this episode, and I want to say it was the episode I did on Emma, but I'm not sure of that. And it was so much content to try to organize it. So I was out on my run, and I was like, Lord, I know I had already had, it had been made very clear to me that one of the women who was very close to me was my third great grandmother on my mother's side, Anne Mariah Bowen, who, as a 15-year-old, sorry for those who have listened, I don't want to repeat stories, but I want to tell you about Anne Maria Bowen. She was 15 when they were being chased out of Nauvoo. Her father fell in the river, crossing the river after trying to get a team of oxen to come to Utah, and he died a few days later. So her mom, I think, had 7 children. So she might have been 14 when her father died, but at 15, she drove a team of oxen herself across the plains for her pregnant sister. She took care of those oxen. She'd never done it before. At one point, they were crossing a river. 15! She's crossing a river with a team of oxen and a wagon, and they start to get turned and they're going to lose the oxen and the wagon down the river. Everyone would die, they'd lose everything. She climbs out on the tongue and unhooks it and figures out how to get the oxen across safely, and then how to get the wagon across safely. This is who this girl was, right? And that's kind of, I don't know, that kind of feels like how I am. I was the athlete of the year every year in school growing up, and I always was gung-ho, and, so I just was like, she's awesome. And then, I didn't know about her story when she started. You guys understand, when she started letting me know messages. When I started recognizing her, I didn't yet know her story. I went and looked it up. I didn't even know her name. And then, because she was an orphan, at 17, just barely 17, they were in conference, and Brigham Young said from the stand, "Anson Call, have you taken a second wife yet?" And he said, "No, Brigham, I haven't." I want to say he was in his 40s. And he said, "There's Anne Maria Bowen, take her." And so the next morning, this girl was sent off with this 40-year-old man that she'd never met. Her mother was sitting by her, had already been married off to another man. Maybe that man didn't want to have this extra teenager, who knows? This is how it worked. So she goes off. Anyway, she ends up having 6 children. She lost 2 little girls. But at one point, so the big call establishment was in Bountiful, but she was left up north of Brigham City in a little hut with nothing, with her children, and a whole herd of cattle that she was responsible for. And she realized he was supposed to come back. Her husband was supposed to come back, and she realized it was getting too late in the season, and she and her children wouldn't survive the winter in that little hut that they were living in. So she, on her own, with a babe in arms, I can't remember if she was pregnant, but she had little children, on foot, brought this, I can't say on foot. That's how I visualize it, but I can't remember if I'm remembering that correctly. In any case, she brought this huge a herd of cattle from north of Brigham City to Bountiful. And one of her things that she was so proud of is she didn't lose a single one. And she did that to save her children and her life. But she was left in a situation where she had to do that. And then a little while after that, her husband had gone and helped with the hand carts. And so he got 2 new wives after that. I know how it looks to me. It's like, oh, here's your reward, 2 of the women that came, And anyway, those women, the story in our history, I don't know exactly what happened, but they conspired they didn't approve of Anne. She was an outdoorsy person. She was always taking care of the ranch and taking care of the teamsters that were working the ranch. And she ran the post office, and she made incredible food and served at the restaurant and all of these kinds of things, and apparently that wasn't approved of. So they conspired, and they got Anson Call to divorce her, which meant she was kicked out, which meant she didn't get her children. The only child she was able to take was her babe in arms, her nursing little girl. And when that little girl was old enough, when she was just a young child, the oldest son was sent from Bountiful to Spanish Fork. She had to make her way to Spanish Fork, where she lived with her mother, who had been married off again. The oldest son was sent to Spanish Fork to take the little girl away. So she lost all of her children. And then in her old age, because she was homeless and destitute, they invited her out of charity to come live out the rest of her days in the Call compound in Bountiful. So she had to go back and live among those people that had done that to her. my great-grandfather was her 3 or 4-year-old. He was the next oldest, other than her baby, and had gone to Mexico and was the bishop in Colonial Dublin. By the time she got back, I don't know if she ever saw him again. And when I read his histories, it talked about what an unruly child he was and what a difficult child. I'm like, because you took his mother away and there was no one there that loved him, so all you can see is that he was bad. So that I knew this woman was on, like this feeling I had of tell other women, when I experienced the healing and the wisdom and the pain of our foremothers. And people say, oh, it's just your ancestors. That's not how it felt. It felt like the wisdom of the mothers, you know? And I knew that she was one of them. She was one of them that would wake me up at 5 o'clock in the morning with a thought that I needed to go look up. Or, you know, like, she's a powerhouse, and I love her. And so, anyway, so I was out on this run, and I was like, Lord, can you send me an angel who's really good at formatting to do this part for me? Because it's so hard, and I don't feel like I'm good at it, and it's hard, you know? And so I was running, and all of a sudden Emma came to mind again. I was like, Lord, can I like talk to Emma? You know, it was, and anyway, all of a sudden, Emma was there. And I knew for the first time what I haven't known before, that I wasn't just thinking of Emma. Emma was there every time that I was struggling throughout that whole time. I was like, I know you. And it wasn't just that I was thinking of her, it was that she was there. I just didn't know know her yet. So in that moment, I was able to like experience Emma knowing who she was. And I like, oh my gosh, if people think I'm crazy, that's okay. That's, you know, I'm getting used to that. So, but I was like, Emma, now I knew, instead of just pondering and thinking about her, I knew I was communing with Emma. And among all the questions I asked, I was like, well, first of all, I just thanked her so profusely, and then I can't remember the order right now, but one of the things I felt from her was so much love and so much gratitude, which sounds ridiculous to me to say because I have all the gratitude for her, but I felt this clear thank you for taking this on that I tried to do my entire life, you know, like, thank you for telling the truth about me and my husband and my children and our family and our work, our life's work. And so I was like, can you tell me where to find something, or what can I do to like help? You know, because it's so hard to argue this. To me at this point, it's so obvious. But how do I get through to people? Like, is there, and she just kind of laughed. And she was like, I did it my whole life. I couldn't convince them. Why could I, like, how am I going to help you convince them? All I can tell you is thank you and keep going, you know? And so I was like, oh, I really thought you could solve this for me, darn it. And so, but as I kept running, I was just like, I need help. Like, Lord, can you send help? And it was just this, what do you think I'm doing? Like, you know, what do you think I'm doing? And I realized all of a sudden, it was Emma, and it was Mariah, and then it was my 2 little girls. And I realized there is this team of women, right? Like, fully engaged in this work that was overwhelming. And that was exactly what I wanted. These 2 little girls of mine are engaged fully in this work. This is exactly where they're supposed to be. And they're there. I can't sell my dad short, because one of the nights when I was really struggling while I was expecting my 13th, my dad and my little girls came to me and he just let me know he had them, you know, because even though you know they're in a wonderful place, who's taking care of my babies, you know? And so, so my dad is awesome as well. But anyway, realizing this team of women that was supporting what I'm trying to do, and I don't want to own it. I think so many of us are engaged in this, right? But so it's not just me. It's just I can only share my own experiences, and it was powerful and profound to realize how close the other side is and how personal it is to them still. How much Emma appreciates us knowing the truth, believing the truth, and sharing the truth about who she was, who her husband was, who they still are. I haven't, like when I talk about, I mean, I personally haven't had an experience like that with Joseph Smith. I love Joseph Smith, but it's Emma that who I know. And often still, I'll just be like, okay, I know that spirit. I recognize that. And it's beautiful to me. And so that's like when you were doing this conference on Emma, and it's Emma's birthday, and it's my little 13th, my little Avery's birthday is next week. And I wanted to be able to come and share who I believe Emma is and how she feels about what we are doing and how much it matters and how much we have truth on our side. I think that like okay, and I'll just tell a little bit more. When I was discussing polygamy. So for those who don't know, and for some of you already know, I was a dyed-in-the-wool polygamy lover, right? My grandmother is the oldest daughter of post-manifesto polygamists. My great-grandfather was called by Joseph F. Smith in 1906 to go to Mexico and take a second wife because his first wife was not able to have children. And so they went to Mexico, married the bishop's daughter, and she had, was it 9 children or 11 children? My grandmother had 11 children. Maybe she had 9. And my grandmother is the oldest of those children. So they waited, I got the numbers wrong sometimes if I mix them up. They waited until she turned 18, right after her 18th birthday. She married my 36-year-old grandfather. And some of the things they always talked about is they were never alone together before they got married. So this was her experience. And when so the first wife's name was Agnes, and my grandmother's name was not Agnes, but my grandmother's name, the first baby born, was named Agnes, after the first wife. And as soon as she was old enough, the grandparents, William Gailey Sears and Agnes, I'm not thinking of her last name, I know it, but it was Sears at this point. They brought baby Agnes, my grandmother, to Salt Lake to make the ground rounds and show her around, while my 18-year-old great-grandmother was left in Mexico. And so just heartbreaking stories. And they were kind, good, wonderful people. It just truly was a Sarah and Hagar story, right? Like that's what this story was, because that's what polygamy is. And these were the kindest people. Like even a historian too, Barbara Jones Brown, specifically studied my ancestors, and she said they lived polygamy as well as you could possibly live it. And it was still horrible. The poverty, the lack, the non-support from good men who were trying. It's just not a good system, right? And so anyway, I didn't know any of those stories. I was raised on the beautiful stories. I was raised being told that when my grandfather died, my great-grandfather, he served as a mission president multiple times. He translated the Book of Mormon into Samoan. He worked at church headquarters in the church office building, and an apostle spoke at his funeral. So when he died, the stake center was packed. Everybody came to his funeral. A few years later, when Agnes died, the first wife, the chapel was empty. And my grandmother just cried and said, "Where are they? Don't they know I loved her just as much as him?" And so that's the story I was raised on. So I thought, there are things we don't understand, and polygamy is beautiful. And then I was always told how wonderful my great-grandmother was. She was just beloved. So I thought, okay, these are amazing people. This is what we're raised. I mean, this is the kinds of people this system creates. We don't understand anything about it. I was also massively naive, and I was just taught this, and I thought, someday we'll be able to live these higher laws of polygamy and the law of consecration, and then we'll be able to establish Zion, and then Jesus will come. Yay! I'm looking forward to those days. That's what I really thought. And so when I started studying the scriptures on polygamy, it threw me into massive cognitive dissonance. And that's when I started my group to talk about it. And anyway, so now I did lose the point of why I went off on that tangent. So I've got to get it back. Why did I go into that story? Can't remember why. I did remember why. So when I started my podcast, so I started my Facebook discussion group, Mormon discussion group, and had all of these polygamists joining in, and I really felt like I know just factually that Joseph wasn't doing the same thing Brigham was doing. That's obvious. But he was doing something. That's what I really thought he was doing something. There was evidence that I couldn't get over that really, So that's what I thought, and I thought that that's why his life was not protected, and he was allowed to be killed. That's where I was when I started my podcast. And I was there for a long time, but I kept studying, kept researching, but I still, every time, anyway, it wasn't until I did my episode on Emma that I knew that it wasn't true. That I knew Emma was not who they said she was. And the only way to make the stories of Joseph's polygamy true are to make the stories of Emma's living with polygamy true. That's the only way. And it was, I know her, right? And I know what everybody said about her throughout her life. And I know her dying words. Who was it that spoke this morning? That read Emma's dying words, right? I mean, not her dying words, that read Emma's words. There you are, thank you. That read Emma's words when Joseph died, right? Like, I knew. And so, but I still, at that point, I knew, but I felt like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't talk about this. I was starting to get respected historians on my podcast, and I was starting, it was starting, because what I really felt called to do was to help women understand that polygamy was not of God. And if I sideline myself like this, I become a flat earther, conspiracy theorist, polygamy denier, blah, 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 then will I not be able to do that part anymore? And that's the more important part to me, God, Joseph and Emma matter, but God matters more, and so, and that was when I had profound experiences. Am I out of time? Oh, are you sure? Okay. When you guys want to get the hook and drag me off, then let me know. But this is why I didn't get any sleep. So I would have no filter whatsoever. So I was thinking about this, and I fell asleep, and I woke up, and I couldn't remember the dream I was having, but I know that in the dream, things were made very clear to me. And I woke up, and my adult daughter, Kate, was standing by my bed. She woke me up, and I sat up, and I said, Joseph wasn't a polygamist. Those were my first words. And she's like, okay, Mom. And I was like, no, God just revealed to me that Joseph was not a polygamist for 100% certain, right? And so we got up, and we had to go to a game at a high school where one of my kids was playing, and we were there in this big crowd of people, right, sorting through, and written, I'll get there, but written on the wall, I all of a sudden turned my head, and was written on the wall, Joseph was not a polygamist. The team colors were orange, everyone was wearing orange, and it was this big, huge sign written in orange, and I just was like, because I think I had asked, Lord, can I have a confirmation? And it was written on the wall, and I just went like this, and then I woke up. So it was a literal, what's it called? What's the word? A dream within a dream. There's a movie made about that, right? What is it? Inception. All I could think of was conception. I knew that wasn't right. Inception. It was literal inception. And I woke up. Oh, this is what happened. Dang it. I blew the punchline. When my daughter Kate was standing there, and I said, Joseph was not a polygamist. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, shoot, it was just a dream. Darn it. Okay, God, can you give me a confirmation? That's what it was. So we went to the game at the high school, and written on the wall in big giant orange letters was Joseph was not a polygamist. I was like, I think that's a confirmation. And then I woke up, and then I said, oh, it was just a dream. And the Lord said, didn't we just do this? And so I was like, okay, and I want to clarify, because people are so infuriating. You know, I have said so many times, my superpower is the ability to find and step right in the middle of the biggest pile of crap that there possibly could be. Because my gosh, like to be the number one punching bag of the anti-Mormons, while at the same time having like thousands of Mormons calling for your excommunication, I'm like, whoa, go me. You know, way to go, Michelle. Way to make friends everywhere. But so it really was hard for me to want to speak out about it because of all of those reasons. And I was praying about it after this dream within a dream, which I don't know. I love God. I love the way that God works with us, right? I mean, it's great. But I was praying and just saying, Lord, what should I do? Because not only did I not feel equipped at that point, I was not equipped at that point with the history. It was overwhelming, and I was already working so hard that to get into the full history of Joseph Smith's polygamy, is there a hairier question? I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some debate in like nuclear physics that I'm not aware of that's this hard, but this felt hard to me, you know. And so I knew that if I came out about it, I couldn't yet defend it adequately. I knew about Emma, and I knew about several of these details, but I knew I didn't know the history of Joseph Smith well enough to be able to refer to every source. I'm very different now. Now I'm like, come on, bring it on. Bring it on. And in fact, when I hear the historians talking about it, I'm like, you brought a pocket knife to a gunfight, my friend. Like, come on. That's what you've got? And so that's how I feel. Maybe I'm overconfident, but I don't think so. Because every time another historian goes the rounds, I'm like, that's what you've got? You know? And so anyway, so, okay, train of thought. I hope someone's going to edit this talk. Oh, that's what it was. That's what it was. So I knew I couldn't yet defend it adequately like I would need to, because I knew I was going to just call all the heat down on myself. At this point, the anti-Mormons really liked me because I was helping the Mormons understand that polygamy was not of God. So they were like, look at this lady, she's awesome. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, like the messages I got from the anti-Mormons and, you know, like, oh, just kidding. We thought she was kind of cool. She's psycho. And so that was kind of where I knew it would go, and it did. So that's why I was praying. I was like, Lord, I don't feel like I can support this yet, and I do not want to lead anyone astray, and I don't want to make a fool of myself or other people. And that was when I had another profound experience where I was able to say, with certainty, even though I couldn't back it up fully yet, that Joseph is not a polygamist. And so that's been my experience with the Lord, and with my girl Emma, you know, and the fact that we are still in this place where we are seeing both Joseph and Emma and all of their children and through Brigham's lens is shocking to me. Talk about erasing women. We are still doing it. Emma's testimony on this topic, to be derailed and demoted down to where we're comfortable throwing it all away by coming up with some stupid excuse that has no supportive evidence to explain why she lied. So all of these people in Brigham's kingdom were telling the truth 30 years later. But, Emma was just trying to protect her sons. How does that make any sense at all? And that's what we do with it. And so it is maddening how we are still erasing women. I want to switch it around and prioritize Emma as the number one witness. Joseph is the number one witness, but Emma lived another 30 plus years to continue to witness, which she did steadfastly, consistently, universally, with no lapse in her story anywhere. Show me one other person in the polygamy debate that has that going for them. Right? She was his wife. She was as close to it as anyone could possibly be. And she was the one giving us this clear testimony. And we erase her. Now that we even have the sources to know what she said, we refuse to believe her. We minimize and try to claim she didn't say what she actually said. Right? Everything we possibly could do, we accuse her. We accuse her of... We still believe what Brigham said about her at least twice trying to kill Joseph. And then we still teach about that she called him back to Nauvoo. We still say that she told them to take their garments off to go to Carthage jail so they wouldn't have protection. I mean, it's so insane to me. And if you do the littlest bit of research, you see the problems with all of those claims. We still claim these things. Brigham in one of those speeches also said that he knew for a fact that she was the wickedest woman on the earth and a child of hell. So are we still believing that part of it too? Where's the proof for that? Because I can show you what everyone who knew Emma said about her. And it was not that. And I can show you what a lot of people who knew Brigham said about him. It was a little closer to that. Right? And so that's where we are. And that's why this matters so much. And that's why I'm so thankful to have been invited. And why I'm so thankful that I came, even though my eyes look like this. And this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where we're all supposed to be. And I'm so thankful to be reminded of Emma on her birthday and to have the chance to share what I know of Emma. So I want to thank you all so much. And I don't know how we are on time. Do you want to be done or do you want to do the Q&A?
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, yes.
Has Whitney Horning's work influenced you or helped you to clarify anything about Joseph and Emma?
Nope, I did it all by myself without relying on any. Whitney is my dear friend. I met her before I believed that Joseph was not a polygamist. And she came, it was my stake that did the first of those, what are they called? The firesides on the problems. So we had Brittany Ogden Nash come and speak at our stake, and Whitney and Vern came, and that's where I met her. And it was actually Whitney and I just recorded, well, along with Gwendolyn Wine, and my editor, who we'll introduce, just recorded an episode the other night. And so I actually talked to Whitney for a lot of the drive here. She kept me awake. So you can all thank Whitney for saving my life. I got here still awake. And yes, her work has been profoundly helpful. It is so amazing to not have to start completely from scratch. I didn't read Heber's journals. Whitney did, right? And she did, and the work that she compiled has been very helpful. Just like the prices have been helpful, and I think we're helpful to her. And we're all just building. It's so funny when someone kind of acts like, no, that's my source. I was going to talk about. It's like, no, we all talk about the same sources because we have the same body of work. So yes, anyway, I cannot speak highly enough of Whitney. She's a rock star in my world. I adore her. Yeah.
Michelle, what year was this that you woke up to the idea that Joseph Smith was not a polygamist?
Oh, I was a latecomer. My episode that I did on Joseph was not a polygamist was my 1-year anniversary. So starting in, 2013, 2014, I learned that polygamy was not of God. I started my Facebook group in 2015. So I was up in the air about Joseph that entire time. Right? And it wasn't, I think I probably knew he wasn't a polygamist in 2020, but it wasn't until, and I in my episode on Emma is where the first time I said it, but I didn't make it about that. So it was that 1-year episode was the first time that I was like willing to step all the way in the pile of poo.
The reason I asked is because it sounds like it wasn't just you, but it was a lot of others where this idea was just starting to float in people's minds and it started to come to fruition.
Yeah, I think the Lord is revealing this. I mean, to me, things that are such profound testimonies to me of the Book of Mormon are things like, things will be revealed, the hidden things of darkness will be revealed, and all things will be revealed shouted from the rooftops. And, like, we have all of these prophecies in both the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants that I see coming out. And I will say, I didn't come to this position because of anybody else's work. I didn't read Whitney's book until after I had come to this position. I came to this position through my own study of Emma. Like, reading Mormon Enigma is mind-bending. Right? That was one of, but it still is what we go with. And it's called Enigma because we can't make sense of her. I'm like, you think? Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So, yes?
Michelle, is there any chance that you and Whitney Horning and Jeremy Hoop and Rob Fotheringham and Mark Curtis and Justin Griffin will make a full-length feature film so we can get the word out to everybody?
Well, so my editor, who I just had on this interview, she's working on one right now. She's done documentaries in the past, and she's doing one right now. I won't be involved directly in it, but she's doing it because she wants that exact thing, just one thing that shows the highlights. I think what we struggle with, why I'm glad she's doing it, and maybe I'll have parts of it that I'm like, because there's so much. It's such a huge topic that trying to get it into 2 hours is so challenging. And then you have to also know what audience am I talking to, because that helps you know. If I'm just talking to a neighbor, which I try not to do, because I talk to my neighbors, just not on this topic, unless they talk to me first. But so, like, if I'm just talking to a lay person, then I share a whole different version than if I'm talking to historians. Right? And so, or if I'm talking to anti-Mormons, like, they all have a different paradigm about it, and they've all read different sources about it, so they all have very different objections that have to be spoken to. So it's really hard to do one thing, but that is in my dream world. Yes. And so I'm really thrilled that Karen is doing it. You'll be introduced to her on the podcast. And I right now have almost an embarrassment of riches. I have so many interviews that I've done that it's like, we don't have enough Sundays close enough together. But at the same time, the research I'm doing takes time. So it's a good, anyway. So yes, that is, in fact, I'm planning to, play that. We're going to do a watch party of that new documentary for my 132nd episode. So that's when it will come out, which is coming right up. We're getting close to that. So yes, she will have that version. Justin wanted to do one with Jeremy, but it hasn't worked out that way. Jeremy's doing it in a different way. So I'm really excited for what Karen is doing, and then we'll keep trying. That was what I wanted to do for my 2nd year anniversary, was the full story, but it was so big. I was like, okay, I can do the scriptures, kind of. And then, yeah. So that's why for the 132nd, it's Karen that has to do that job, because it's too hard for me. So hopefully you will like it. Hopefully it will serve its purpose, because I think that's a great idea. Yes. Are there any more? Yes.
I think talk about just a little bit briefly about the pain that women go through as far as being able to accept. I mean, I found a lot of people struggle with thinking Joseph was both a liar and doing all this, and we've been taught all these things for so long that we just think all men have these problems. And my own thing is that Joseph is different than these people, other guys that we're used to, including myself. So how would you speak to the women overcoming that, all the men letting them down for generations?
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to try and grab on what I think your question is, and then feel free to steer me.
Yeah, that's a couple.
Yeah, because it's kind of a big one. But it's really interesting to watch both men and women, but particularly women on this topic, because there are a lot of women who are, like I were, where it's just unexplored and naive. And we just know it's of God, and we know it's good, and we know Joseph Smith did it, and God commanded it, and Abraham and Jacob, so therefore, that's all we need to know, right? So I run into that a lot, and like there's a lot of hostility. That crazy David Alexander guy made 15 videos about me, right? And my leaders started getting a bunch more letters. I mean, it's just obnoxious, this attitude where they really don't know anything about it other than it's good. Because I'm like, okay, let's actually do a little bit of research and thinking, both in the scriptures and in the history, right? So there's that perspective that some women have, which surprises me. And then on the other side, yes, there are women who are, I guess, more just intuitively aware than I was, or than these other women are necessarily, who understand that this is a deep, deep problem. And I think the question goes deeper than Joseph Smith. I think Joseph Smith is a big problem, but I think God is the bigger problem, right? Because, I mean, it's kind of one of those cases, again, where the best thing that the polygamy narrative has going for it, and including the church on this topic, is the ignorance of the people, right? Like, if we could just keep everyone ignorant, and then we can kind of try to keep the questions at bay, right? And so, but that doesn't even work, because 132 is in our scriptures, and it's just this landmine, you know, like people are walking around happily on their way reading 2nd Nephi, and then all of a sudden, if someone happens to actually read section 132, it's not in our lesson manuals. Our lesson manuals are like, oh, happy eternal marriage, yay! And that's as far as we go on it, right? And so I think that it is a huge problem, and I think it's a problem for the church and for the, when people are calling for my excommunication, I always am just saying, it will not solve anything. It will not fix the history. It will not minister to the broken hearts, which I'll still get to a little bit more. The only thing it will do is gratify the pride of the most self-righteous members. Why is that good? Why is that what we want to do, right? Thank you. Yes, thank you. So that is what I cannot even begin to tell you the messages that I have received, which I appreciate so much. Some people are like, I'm so sorry to bug you. I'm sure you get so many of these. I'm like, oh no, please go ahead and bug me. I take so much heat that when someone lets me know that I'm doing something good, it's like, thank you, but the heartbreak that all too often is silent, right? It's all too often a private struggle of, is God a monster? Like, how can this be? How could God have used Joseph Smith? And this is who he was. And then the polygamists, including from the very beginning, Orson Pratt and Brigham Young, turned it into there are only two kind of men, which is kind of what you were saying. We've got to have polygamy, or else we'll have brothels. Because there's what is it that Orson Pratt said? We've got a fallen nature to deal with. So God gave his faithful servants, they get to marry their prostitutes, and therefore it's fine. Are you kidding me? The fact that they cannot, this is what I say when, I sometimes feel mean, but it's true. Polygamy makes you stupid, and polygamy warps your mind. It makes you actually believe there is no such thing as a good man, which is a horrific disservice to men, and especially to women. For women to believe that this is what men are and that this is what they should expect, because this is who Joseph Smith was, it's who God chose, so this is who God is, right? So we distrust all men. In fact, I had a realization a couple of years ago that I'll share, and again, this is my speculation, but it sure makes sense to me. We get a lot of heat in the church for things like at girls' camp, and the leaders sometimes will say, oh, girls, you have to put your t-shirts over your swimsuits because the bishop's coming to camp today. Right? Like I've heard that happen so many times, or things of that nature. And it's really bad, right? It's really bad. And I finally realized where I think that comes from. And it's heartbreaking. I think it was the older women, the mothers and the older wives, who on the one hand knew that their husband was going to be coming out, checking out the 14-year-olds, so they're trying to protect themselves, and the mothers knowing that these dirty old men were going to be coming out, checking out their daughters, so they were trying to protect the girls, one or the other. And I think that is part of this heritage. That's the only way I've been able to make sense of it, and it makes a ton of sense to me. And when you hear about even the good polygamist groups, not the FLDS or the Kingstons, the ones that are less bad, they still have, in the AUB, people are reporting that they have this weekly activity where the boys go and do, kind of young men, young women, the boys go and do an activity, the girls do an activity, but at the end of the girls' activity, they have this thing, it has a name. It's like refreshments, and it has this cute name to it. And all of the priesthood men come to the girls' activity, and they have the girls walk around. So it is a meat market parade that the girls are paraded in front of all of the priesthood men, right? Yeah. Do you think that the moms are wanting to cover up their girls? And do you think the older wives who have had 13 children and their husbands lusting after the 14-year-olds? Yeah, I'd be plenty angry, right? And so I think that all of this comes together to just create this demented, deformed idea of who we as women are and what our value is. I have had 13 children, and I'm smart, and I'm filled with love, and how much filter can I have? If my husband were to say to me, I'm sorry, I'm done being intimate with you because I've got these new wives, that would make my life less good, right? And the fact that women are treated as this commodity whose worth declines with age in a religious community, instead of seeing the wisdom of the grandmothers, that accumulated worth that becomes more refined and more elegant in so many ways, the worth of woman has been completely twisted on its head and demeaned and turned inside out, where we are competing with our daughters and granddaughters for the love of our husbands, like in polygamous societies. It's atrocious. And when you get into the stories and read the histories of how many men married the mother, and then as soon as the stepdaughter was old enough, he married her, right? It is fully legitimizing the worst kinds of incest. Thank you, incest. It just warps both men and women in so many ways. And when people say we're nothing like that in our family, I'm like, great, I'm so glad, but you're more like it than you would be if you were monogamous. And in polygamy, this is where it's going to go. Maybe you're not like that, but let's give you 15 years and see where you are. And let's see where your sons are going to be. Oh, the ones that don't get kicked out, right? Because that's the other thing we can do. There's no such thing as a good man, so I have an excuse to kick all of the young men out so I can marry all of the girls that should be marrying those young men. So, sorry, I get heated. It makes me heated. Yes, and that's the one. Just one second. Sorry, that's the thing in this episode we just recorded that makes me so angry. These anti-Mormons and the Mormons and the historians refusing to look at this about Joseph Smith, because people who work in this space have trying to help people who are leaving polygamy they're so not prepared for the world in any possible way. It's horrible, right? How the courage that you have to leave polygamy because you have no idea how to make it in this world and you're being damned to hell for eternity, right? So when they leave, there are people that are helping them, and they have told me, man, if this were true, that Joseph wasn't a polygamist, and you could make this case, it would save so many people. It would help so many people. And so the fact that people are refusing to look at it by just refusing, just calling us names, just calling us conspiracy theorists, and talking about our motivated reasoning and how we have to make over Joseph in the image we want. I mean, it's ridiculous. And they are being so irresponsible. I feel like they have a humanitarian obligation to look at our arguments to try to save people from this deplorable abusive system in the world today, right now. Yes, yes.
Well, you kind of answered the question was...
Thank you.
Have you had an influence on any polygamous families to try to change?
Do you know, I have been reached out to by people who were raised in polygamy or who have left polygamy, and they have told me how helpful it has been to them to understand that polygamy was never of God, and then to understand Joseph was a polygamist. I don't know at this time if polygamists are allowed to watch my show. Or I've said other than one kind of scary one, all of the other death threats I've had have been from polygamists. And so, and they do, they really do call me Satan. you know? And it's interesting because everyone starts using the same stories. Like that David Alexander guy started talking about the wolf in sheep's clothing today. I shouldn't talk about it. I don't want to advertise it. I will at some point do a response. But the historians recently have started speaking about this. I don't know if any of you saw the Tribune article and then the Mormonland podcast just from last week. Did you see it? So that I'm like, oh, the historians are way more important than this psycho cult hopper guy, you know? But anyway, but he was quoting people writing letters about, there was this one ridiculous one. I didn't watch most of them, but this one I watched, and he's talking about how people are misunderstanding the wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm the sheep's clothing, and it's because I was a sheep. I was part of the flock. And so I appear really good. I seem nice, and I have my family, and it's all this show because the wolf is Satan. So Satan is the one that's really speaking, and I'm just the clothing to make him look good. And anyway, and the funny thing is, those were the things that polygamists were saying before he did. And then someone sent it to him. So they don't realize that the polygamists are still doing everything they can to twist. Like now they're having to explain away, oh, how can this person who seems like a good person be saying these things we really disagree with? Oh, here's a story we can come up with, you know? So anyway, yeah, it's a ridiculous world that we're trying to fight. And really, polygamists are the grandmaster champions of motivated reasoning, of ridiculous arguments. The fact that you can take Jacob 2:30 and convince the whole world that it's a loophole is shocking. It's shocking what they've been able to accomplish. I'm just like, wow, Satan has been going full throttle on this. So it's time to call out the BS. So is that it? Are we? Oh, yes.
Are you about tired with this topic of polygamy? How much longer do you think your podcast will last?
You would think so, but my poor husband, because I really am, first thing in the morning, what do you think about this? And it's endlessly fascinating when you really dig into it. Like this episode I'm preparing on the Whitney documents, the one I was going to work on. If anyone doesn't know what the Whitney documents are, those are some of the foolproof evidence that make us know Joseph was a polygamist until, just like Section 132 is foolproof evidence that Joseph was a polygamist, or Joseph's October 5th journal. It's in that category. So I just feel like there's so much work that still needs to be done. But I also am, this was one of the things in my world that I wanted to speak or write about at some point. So I am okay, Lord, is there going to be something next, or is this what the rest of it is? But there's no end in sight, because there's a lot more to do. There are a lot of arguments that need to be dealt with. I'm so excited to do my episode on the affidavits, to help people understand what those actually are, because we're always told, believe women, oh, except for Emma, but believe women, oh, except for Lucy, but believe women, except for all of Joseph's sisters, right? And so people need to understand that this is not the voices of women at all, other than these few women who wrote their later reminiscences under very highly motivated circumstances, shall we say. And if you look at what they actually said, it's ludicrous, right? So I need to do the affidavit episode, and I want to do the episode on the temple lot case to let people know what that's really about. And I want to do the episodes on each of the wives to show what we actually have on them. And I want to do my episode on John Bennett. See, don't you guys want to see all of these episodes? I can't quit yet. So, yes.
Do you think you can get your hands on the unredacted Willard Richards journals?
I'm going to walk right into the church history library and pull up a seat. I wonder what's going to happen with those. I wonder how long they can keep doing this, right? It makes no sense to me how the actual historians, and this will come out in, this was brought up in our conversation that we just had the other night, how the actual historians can accuse us of being conspiracy theorists for not believing the journals that we've not been allowed to see. How is that good historical practice? How is that even logical? I'm sorry, it applies to the historians as well. Polygamy makes you stupider. These are smart people saying really stupid things, in my opinion, so. But I don't know, I'm delusional enough to believe it's going to change. I guess I'm just I'll call your pocket knife and raise you this Uzi because this is our evidence. You know, like it can't go on that much. I mean, I don't know. Other people have thought that things were going to change, but I hope that we're all praying regularly, consistently for the truth for hearts and minds to be opened. That's all we're praying for. And that's why I'm spending a lot of time with historians, because all I want to do is help as many people understand the truth of this topic as possible. And I feel like getting the historians to realize how weak their case is a really good way to get to a lot of people. You know, it just depends on how honest they're willing to be, how humble they're willing to be. And, you know, and then, I don't know, I don't feel it's my place to tell the church leaders what to do. So they're going to do what they're going to do, but I sure am praying that there will be open hearts and open minds and people seeking the Spirit. Because I know how profoundly, this is what the Lord told me. This when I was praying about it, and I had a really profound experience. And some of the words were, I will not, I just read them in the scriptures again. This is my bad translation of it because I don't have it right in front of me, the scriptures I just read. But what it basically was, I will not let people who speak on behalf of my prophet, I will not let them be hung out to dry. That's my bad way of saying it. I will not leave them abandoned. So it was very much the word was, even though I didn't yet have the sources to back this up fully and adequately, and I had some fear that maybe a source would come out that I didn't know about, you know, that the Lord was like, that's not going to happen. And I'll tell you, the year plus that I have spent studying Joseph's history in depth, my goodness, that has been a confirmation of that. Like, profound confirmation of that. Like, anyway, I cannot, at that point, I knew what I knew about Emma. And then I knew what the Lord was telling me that confirmed that. At this point, I'm like, I mean, I am talking big, but that's how I feel right now. I'm like, let's go. Come on. Yeah, bring me your Whitney documents. And here, I'll give you an Emma testimony back. Let's go.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
I don't know why I feel I need to say this, but it's just like, I don't think you can work the top from the top down, and I think we know that. Because it's like, they're set. What you're trying to do, though, is change the hearts of individuals.
Yes, 100%.
And that's the only way it's going to make a difference. Because if people can see the contrast and go, oh, wait, and asking God, that's where it comes from. We need to be asking God, okay, what is the truth of this?
Absolutely.
And which one is, you know.
Well, I think it's both. I think it's both, and I think that this is why I am reaching out to the people. My podcast is not a historical scholar. I mean, I hope it's historical and scholarly, but my target audience from the beginning has been faithful women who believe in polygamy. That not just women, men as well. But I want to speak like. With everything I do, the most important to me is the ministerial work, is the ministering, right? That's the most important. Speaking to what he asked me about the hearts of the women, right? That's my number one job. But like I said, I feel like the fact that this has caught on like it has made the historians take note. And I think that matters. So I think that going top down as well is like, I think that creating this groundswell of people who understand, and they're not just, they keep trying to act like we're ignoramuses who just want to believe this. They don't have a clue what's coming for them. They don't have a clue of how well informed we are, right? And how strong the evidence is. I mean, even just watching my podcast, reading Whitney's book, you're like really well informed, and there's more coming out all the time. So I think doing that, but then at the same time, reaching out to them and letting them acknowledge it piece by piece is either going to further expose them and remove more of their credibility, right? Like Brian Hales. I mean, I've been shocked by the lies he tells. Shocked. If you've not watched my World's Worst Transparenciest episode, you know, it's a little off-brand for me, but I felt like it needed to be done. And so anyway, we'll either expose them, which will force more of them to either become, they can choose, they can become more of a laughing stock, you know, kind of like all the COVID doctors, right? I mean, you know, pushing that. Like, the science needs to be done to either compel them to make a choice, to either go with the truth or keep telling the lie. And we all know what they're doing. That's what I'm hoping. And I really hope that more and more of them will be open to, oh, my son's here. This is my oldest. This is Christian. He's awesome. The one who lives here. So anyway, so that's probably my last question that I will take. But yeah, I think it's worthwhile I try to engage with every historian very respectfully and kindly and articulately and historically rigorously. I want to engage with every one of them possible because I think it makes a difference. So.
Jill, I was just going to ask you right before you said that, how many pieces of hate mail you get personally from Brian Hills?
Well, my state president gets more than I do from him, but I get my fair share. Yeah, it's anyway, and I feel bad. I do a lot of that hopo ono ono. What is that? You know, like, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. You know, so I can keep my heart in the best place possible. So I wish for the best for all of these people. I just, like, at the same time, we have to call out lies, right? So it's nothing personal, and I'm never trying to be mean, and I'm never trying to be demeaning. But if you are going to lie about my girl Emma like that, I'm going to call you out. Right? And I'm going to do it in a kind of mocky way, so be aware. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.